Chapter 589. I didn't know how to explain the sword-swallowing scripture, so I joked with the fatty. I didn't take it to heart then. I never expected that after using the sword-swallowing scripture, I would advance from the early stage of Heaven Master to the middle stage of Heaven Master during my first sword cultivation. I even caused such a huge commotion. This time, the fatty was completely dumbfounded. His ability to think logically disappeared, and he completely believed my words. I looked at him in shock. I couldn't bear to tease him anymore, so I waved my hand and explained to him with a smile. How can you become stronger by eating a sword? I was just joking with you. In actual fact, I didn't eat a sword, but used a technique called sword-swallowing scripture. Its only use is to absorb the sword into my body so that I can train in sword cultivation. It won't increase my power. I had a breakthrough earlier because I learned something from training in sword cultivation. Secondly, I was at the brink of breaking through, so I broke through. It was all a coincidence and not what you think. After saying all that, I thought I had explained everything clearly enough. The fatty's expression changed when he heard that. He looked at me solemnly. After half a minute of silence, he lowered his head and said in pain, "Third baby, you've changed." I was stunned again. I didn't know what was wrong with the fatty. It took me a long time to come back to my senses. I asked him, "How have I changed?" The fatty sighed, and his expression became even more pained. "Third baby, we've been friends since we were young. Although we've grown up and you've become a saint, did our friendship change as well? You said you didn't become stronger by eating swords, but you used the sword-swallowing scripture to train in the sword. Aren't you lying to me? If it was just to absorb the sword into the body, it would be so simple. Even with my current cultivation, I could easily do it, so why did you have to swallow the sword?" Taoist swords are magical artifacts. After refining with one's own blood, they can be absorbed into the body. Any cultivator would know this technique. Don't tell me you don't know it. The fatty's words were serious. I could tell that he was really angry. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. What he said was right. The method of sacrificing essence blood to refine an artifact, not to mention that he had glory of consciousness cultivation. Even people with acupoint sealing cultivation could use this kind of method. Wanting to store the sword in his body was not a problem at all. But the problem was that it was the Xianyuan sword. Cultivators had to have a certain level of cultivation to refine a ritual implement. Without sufficient cultivation, there was no way to successfully refine a ritual implement. It would only result in a backlash. If you want to refine the Xianyuan sword, not to mention an ordinary heaven master like me, even a yang spirit or even a yang spirit who has been promoted would not dare to refine it with his blood essence in the face of the pressure of the Xianyuan sword. That is simply courting death. If it weren't for the fact that the sword-swallowing spell was really strange and that the power of the sword stone had opened a Xianyuan sword box, I wouldn't have dared to try it. Even then, I was merely trying when I swallowed the Xianyuan sword earlier, and I'd utterly never imagined that I would actually succeed. Speaking of which, I can't blame Fatty for being angry. If I hadn't personally tested this sword-swallowing technique, I would never have believed it myself. With Fatty's current cultivation and eyesight, it's normal for him not to believe it. It would be strange if he did. Of course, this was only one of the reasons. The other reason was just like how the Fatty mentioned my identity as a saint. To this day, I was still a little confused about this so-called sage and the Nine Cauldrons family that Wang Qin had mentioned. But no matter what, since I had obtained this identity, Wangwu, Grotto Heaven, and Uncle Lin had always regarded themselves as my servants. Although I had never shown anything strange in front of Fatty, Uncle Lin was his father, so Fatty would definitely feel strange about it. Moreover, when I came to Wangwu, Grotto Heaven this time, Wang Qin had repeatedly reprimanded Fatty for chatting casually with me. Although I had also reprimanded Wang Qin, standing in Fatty's position, I felt even more uncomfortable. After thinking about it, I felt a little sad. After some thought, he broke into a smile and explained to the Fatty, "This sword engulfing spell is really a little strange. If you're interested, here's the sword incantation. I also have other Dao swords here. You can take them and play with them." I tried to make my tone sound relaxed. I didn't want to ruin my friendship with Fatty. Then, I gave him the sword-swallowing spell and an ordinary Taoist sword from Xiang Lu's leather pouch. At this moment, The fatty's expression was a little guilty. He probably felt that his words were too harsh, but the guilt was only because of the friendship between us and not because of my explanation. It was obvious that he didn't believe my explanation. Fatty didn't show any pain on his face, but he still pretended to be angry. I guess he wanted to ease the awkwardness. He took the sword-swallowing spell and the Taoist sword and said to me, "I'm not coveting your cultivation technique. You know that I'm a lazy person. I just muddle along when it comes to cultivation. Do you know why I'm cultivating outside in the rain today? Humph, it's because of you. I want to ask around today. The heavenly grand ritual of the blessed and heavenly lands will be held in the arena. The rule is that each blessed and heavenly land will send 3 people, 1 Yang God Celestial Master, 1 Seal Celestial Master, and 1 Earthly Master. My cultivation isn't high, so I don't care about the matters of the Celestial Masters and above. But in the Earthly Master realm, I'm confident that no one in the world can be my opponent. But to be safe, I purposely sharpened my spear. After listening to him, I couldn't help but feel warmth in my heart. I hadn't asked Officer Wong about the specific rules of the All-Heaven competition because I'd only come to provide my combat power. There was no need for me to participate in the decision-making. I didn't expect that the fatty would pay attention to it and even keep it in his heart. Just as he said, the fatty was really lazy. In fact, he was extremely talented, not any weaker than me. Moreover, he had started cultivating earlier than me. If he was a hard-working person, he would have reached the Heavenly Master realm long ago. When I came back, I was wondering why he had suddenly become hard-working. It turned out that this was his purpose. I smiled and patted his head as usual. That's because I'm not at the Earthly Master realm. If I were at the Earthly Master realm, I would have to compete with you if you dare to boast like that. However, your strength is still all right. Not to mention, when I was testing my sword yesterday, the formation that you laid was something that even I wouldn't be able to break when I was at the Earthly Master realm. I'm afraid that no one in the Earthly Master realm would be able to defeat me. All right, go and take a look at the sword-swallowing art. The Heavenly Grand Ritual is about to begin. I'm still a little rusty with the armor-stripping sword, so I'll have to study it more. Even though Officer Wong's words are sometimes annoying, he's still close to us. This time, we'll help him with the Heavenly Grand Ritual. The fatty curled his lips. I'm only helping you. Whoever wants to help Officer Wong can. All right, help me. I smiled and didn't bother with the fatty anymore. I walked over and simply tidied up the messy palace. After that, I sat cross-legged on the bed and took out the armor-stripping sword to continue cultivating. I was already able to control the armor-stripping sword to attack within 4 seconds. However, this was clearly not enough. Even though the 2 sword slaves that I faced that day had high cultivation, they didn't have any spiritual intelligence. I could stop them with just a few tricks. However, if I were to fight with someone else, they probably wouldn't even give me a chance. Furthermore, I definitely wouldn't be able to use talismans in the arena. Otherwise, it would just be a competition of resources. The tournament would also lose its meaning. Therefore, I still had to completely master the armor-stripping sword. There was only 1 day left until the Heavenly Grand Ritual. If my cultivation was still at the initial stage of the Heavenly Master Realm, 1 day wouldn't have been enough for me to completely master the armor-stripping sword. However, after advancing to the intermediate stage of the Heavenly Master Realm, everything was different. The true essence of my body was more abundant, so I could use it more easily. This was my first time trying to control the armor-stripping sword, so I managed to control the time to within 3 seconds. After familiarizing myself with it a few times, I managed to compress the time to a little more than a second. When experts fought, the situation could change in an instant. Although a little more than a second seemed fast, it was actually far from enough. I calmed myself down and circulated the Tao Qi in my body, continuing to cultivate. It was extremely difficult to improve further, but every time I improved, I managed to control the Tao Qi in my body to half a second. During this period of time, my Tao Qi and true essence were exhausted several times. Every time, I would go out to replenish them. This kind of absorption and consumption was extremely beneficial to my cultivation. As I trained to control the armor-stripping sword, I also completely stabilized my intermediate stage of the Heavenly Master realm. Although half a second was slightly long, it could almost be considered instantaneous. Moreover, at this level, I knew that I couldn't improve any further for the time being. Thus, I stopped and tried to use my shaman chi to activate the armor-stripping sword a few times. I discovered that the two weren't compatible. After trying a few times to no avail, I finally gave up. Magic tools were very particular about compatibility. For example, the Yin-Yang Yama brush from back then could successfully be compatible with the shaman chi and could be used by activating both at the same time. However, this armor-stripping sword couldn't be activated with shaman chi because it wasn't compatible with shaman chi. There was also the Xianyuan sword. This sword was the Yellow Emperor's personal sword, so it was extremely compatible with Dao Chi. When I tried to use my shaman chi to activate it, I felt an intense hostility from it, so I didn't even dare to try it. Trying to use my shaman chi was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. I didn't take it to heart even if I failed. After I finished cultivating, I stretched my body and stood up. Then, I remembered about the fatty and quickly turned my head to look around. The fatty was currently sitting cross-legged on a praying mat by the table. In his hand was the sword-swallowing chant that I had given him. He was concentrating on reading it. On the ground not far from him, there was a pile of metal shards and a sword hilt. Looking at the pile of metal shards, my eyes instantly widened. The fatty couldn't have really gone to eat swords, right? I quickly walked over and asked, "What's going on?" The fellow seemed to be immersed in the sword-swallowing chant. Hearing my voice, he raised his head in a daze. "I'm studying the sword-swallowing chant." "You don't say. This thing is really interesting." I pointed at the pile of metal shards. "I'm asking about this. Since you're studying the sword-swallowing chant, what's going on with this sword?" Hearing that, the fatty's face instantly reddened. He stammered, "That? I thought you were lying to me." I was too lazy to look at the sword-swallowing chant. I thought that after eating the Tao sword, I would be able to absorb the spiritual power in the Tao sword. And the result? Chapter 590. I gawked at the fatty. This fellow is really a clown? I turned to look at the pile of scrap iron and then at the fatty. I couldn't help but sigh. Should I call you stupid or praise you for having iron teeth and copper teeth? The fatty blushed. It was rare that he didn't argue with me. He said embarrassedly, "I don't know what's wrong with my brain. I just feel that if you can eat swords to become stronger, there's no reason why I can't. Enough." I waved my hand and said snappily, "Let's not talk about this anymore. What do you think about the sword-swallowing art? If you think it's interesting, I have a complete sword cultivation technique here." After the fatty heard that, he immediately stuffed the sword-swallowing art in my hand and shook his head like a rattle drum. "I just think that swallowing swords is fun. What's so interesting about a sword cultivation technique? My master told me that when we were Zhanshi, we can't casually practice other cultivation techniques, especially those that involve fighting and killing. It will affect our pure Tao heart. Not only will it not increase our cultivation, but it will also cause our cultivation to drop." I didn't really believe his words. I wondered if it was Master Guan's original words or just an excuse to slack off. However, since he didn't have the heart to practice, I couldn't force him. Thus, I put away the sword-swallowing art and asked him if his cultivation had increased in the past 2 days. The fatty proudly raised his head and said with his hands clasped behind his back, "Originally, my cultivation was already at the peak of the glorious knowledge realm. After a few days of diligent practice, it has increased again. Although I haven't become a heavenly master, an ordinary heavenly master is no match for me in terms of strength." I didn't care about his bragging, but I was also very concerned about his cultivation. I asked, "Then, when do you think you can become a heavenly master?" Who knew that after hearing this question, the fatty's complacent expression changed to one of bitterness. He sighed and said, "I really can't say for sure. Our lineage is different from other cultivators. Zhanshi's Tao is based on divination. If you want to become a heavenly master, you must predict the world's great fortune." World's great fortune? I frowned as I didn't understand. I asked, "What is the world's great fortune?" The fat guy counted with his fingers. "For example, the change of a dynasty, a disaster that would endanger thousands of lives, a great fortune that would benefit the world, and so on. Listening to him, I was a bit scared. How was this the great fortune of the world? What the fatty said was the true secret of the heavens. After pondering for a moment, I asked him, I'm not proficient in divination, but fortune and misfortune in this world belong to the heavens. Everyone says that the heavens can't be revealed. Can what you said really be divine? Wonkin answered with a smile. Last night, I heard a loud noise here and thought that something bad had happened. I hurried here with Fu to check it out. I found that the sage was breaking through, so I stayed with Fu to protect the sage. After the sage broke through, I wanted to come and congratulate him, but Fu told me that the sage had resumed his cultivation. I was worried that I would disturb the sage, so I left with Fu and waited until dawn to come here to congratulate him. I glanced outside and saw that the sky was indeed bright. No matter what I said, Wonkin insisted on treating me like a servant. Now that we were in the blessed enclave, he called me the sage. Over time, I got used to it. I smiled and accepted his congratulations. How are the preparations for the heavenly grand ritual going? The heavenly grand ritual will be held tomorrow, but I don't know when the heavenly grand ritual will be held. Wonkin told me that the preparations were almost done. Since the heavenly grand ritual was an internal affair of the blessed enclave, they couldn't invite us to watch the ceremony tomorrow. The all-heaven grand competition will begin the day after the heavenly grand ritual ends, which is the day after tomorrow. At that time, he'll come and take me with him. Although the fatty was ready to fight for Wangwu Grotto Heaven, he didn't like Wonkin, so I didn't tell him. I took the opportunity to tell Wonkin about the fatty's decision. After listening to him, Wonkin frowned and hesitated. There are many families in the Blessed Enclave. Although the glorious memory realm is low, they have the most people. Their strength will be stronger than the secular cultivators. Moreover, many families in the Blessed Enclave have deliberately suppressed their cultivation base to the glorious memory realm for the sake of the glorious memory realm. They want to have the upper hand in the glorious memory realm. Therefore, this competition won't be easy. Although he didn't say it out loud, it was clear that he doubted the fatty. The fatty's hair stood on end. He opened his eyes wide and glared at Wonkin. He said angrily, Wong, I want to help you because of third baby. What? Do you look down on the cultivators outside? Come on, let's not talk about the glorious memory realm. Let's have a competition. I'll let you, a frog at the bottom of a well, see the level of the cultivators outside. The two of them weren't familiar with each other, so it was normal for Wonkin to doubt the fatty's strength. However, the fatty didn't take his kindness for granted. Of course, he was annoyed. I hurried to stop the fatty and turned to Wonkin. His cultivation base is extraordinary in the glorious memory realm. Ordinary heavenly masters aren't his match. You can rest assured. After hearing my guarantee, Wonkin nodded hesitantly. However, there was still a hint of doubt in his eyes, which made the fatty angry. I guess the two of them didn't get along, so I had to ask Wonkin to leave first. I told him to come back on the day of the All-Heaven Grand Competition and that we could go there directly. After Wonkin left, the fatty angrily scolded him for not appreciating his kindness. After I persuaded him for a long time, he gave up and went to the lakeside to continue his cultivation. As for me, I stayed in the Taoist palace to stabilize my realm. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, the day of the All-Heaven Grand Competition arrived. Chapter 591. Heavenly Grand Ritual referred to all things in the world. The Heavenly Grand Ritual was a ritual to offer sacrifices to everything in the world. It was used to pray for the alignment of the stars, the protection of the people, and the peace of the country. A sacrificial ceremony of this scale usually required the power of a country to hold. There were only a few in history, and it was unheard of in recent years. Now, only the people of the blessed enclave had the power to hold it. In the past few days, although it was quiet near the Taoist palace where I lived in Wangwu Grotto, the Wangwu Grotto had been preparing for this ceremony for 2 or 3 years. The fat man and I left the Taoist palace with Wang Can and went to another peak. According to Wang Can, this mountain was called the Temple of Heaven Peak. It was said that in ancient times, Xian Yuan used to offer sacrifices to heaven. It was said that when Xian Yuan offered sacrifices to heaven, the goddess of the ninth heaven and the Queen Mother of the West gave him the 9 cauldrons divine elixir scripture and the Yin talisman strategy. That was how he defeated Qi Yu and founded the Huaxia civilization. Later, Wang Can's ancestor, the Lord of Xiqing, opened the Wanwu Grotto and covered the Temple of Heaven. Later, Wang Can's ancestor, the Lord of Xiqing City, opened the Wanwu Grotto and covered the Temple of Heaven Peak. Even so, the emperors of the later dynasties had to come here to offer sacrifices to heaven. It wasn't until the Ming dynasty when Zhu Di built the Temple of Heaven in the capital, imitating the layout of the Temple of Heaven Peak. The Temple of Heaven Peak had a great reputation among the people, and it was even more famous among the Taoists. Since ancient times, the Taoists had respected this place as the Taoists' extreme land, where the gods and immortals of the 5 sacred mountains, the 10 great heavens, and the 36 minor heavens met. It was precisely because of this superb location that the Wanwu paradise was able to flourish for thousands of years and firmly occupy the position of the top of the 10 great paradises. Now that Wang Can's father had passed away, it was normal for the other heavens to covet it. When the 3 of us arrived at the bottom of the Temple of Heaven Peak, I saw that the surrounding mountains were covered with colorful cloths and all kinds of sacrifices were made. When we reached the peak, we were even more amazed. The peak of the Temple of Heaven Peak was huge, covering thousands of acres. At this moment, a gigantic tent had been built on top of the mountain peak that was several thousand acres wide. It was completely covered with multicolored cloth. After entering, it was as if even the sun was isolated from the outside world. Within this 5-colored cloth, there were 9 altars set up in the shape of an arc, worshiping all the gods of heaven and earth. The top 3 altars were called Universal Heaven and were worshipped by the 10 heavenly grottos. The middle 3 altars were called Zhou Tian and were worshipped by the 36 heavenly grottos. The bottom 3 altars were called Luo Tian and were worshipped by the 72 blessed lands. The upper 3 altars were in the innermost area, the middle 3 altars were in the middle, and the lower 3 altars were in the outermost area. There were a total of 7,200 deity positions, and in front of each deity position, there were several Taoists dressed in luxurious clothes and ceremonial crowns. Officer Wang told me that the main rituals of the sacrificial ceremony included burning incense, opening the altar, inviting water, waving the banner, announcing the results, cleaning the filth, inviting the holy saint, summoning the holy saint, conferring the star, presenting the holy saint, dropping the banner, sending off the holy saint, and so on. When chanting sutras and worshipping, every Taoist priest had to walk the steps and astral steps. In other words, during this sacrificial ceremony, the tens of thousands of people who rushed here from various grotto heavens and blessed lands all had at least glory of consciousness cultivation. A few days ago, when Wang took me to the banquet, I saw people from the blessed lands. There were only 100 or 200 of them. Although their cultivation was high, I didn't think much of them. Now, when tens of thousands of people appeared in front of me, I was shocked by the power of the blessed lands. When I was in the Metaphysics Association, cultivators at the glorious consciousness realm could be the vice president of the headquarters. And now, tens of thousands of people in front of me had the glorious consciousness realm. No wonder the people from the blessed lands didn't care about the cultivators from the outside world. Their strength was not on the same level. With so many cultivators at the glorious consciousness realm, it was normal for other celestial masters, young god celestial masters, and Wang Can's father to come from the blessed lands. While I was sighing with emotion, Wang Can told me that the heavenly grand ceremony would last for 49 days, and it would be divided into 7 ceremonies, including the blessing ceremony, the offering peace ceremony, the emperor ceremony, the water ceremony, the fire ceremony, the 9 emperor ceremony, and the 3 element ceremony. After yesterday's ceremony, The people in charge of the Blessed Lands had to prepare for the All-Heaven competition. As for the remaining ceremonies, the Taoists from the Blessed Lands would complete them themselves. The arena for the All-Heaven competition was set in the middle of the heavenly grand ritual, which was the 3 altars of the 10 Blessed Lands. In the grand competition, each family would send out 3 people, namely the Young God Celestial Master, the Seal Celestial Master, and the Glory of Consciousness Realm. Among them, the Glory of Consciousness Realm was still all right. When they fought, the damage caused was not too great. As long as the arena was set up a little bigger, there would generally be no problems. However, when Seal Celestial Master and Young God Celestial Master fought, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was earth-shattering. Generally speaking, it was impossible to find an arena that could withstand the power of a battle between Celestial Masters. However, the Blessed Lands had been around for thousands of years, so they naturally had countermeasures. The heavenly grand ritual before us had tens of thousands of glorious consciousness realm cultivators communicating with heaven and earth to worship 7,200 gods. The power inside was incomparably terrifying. The arena for the All-Heaven competition was placed in the middle of the 3 altars. Its purpose was to use the power of the worship to form a barrier. No matter what happened on the arena, let alone Young God Celestial Master, even if Xia Ju Celestial Master fought, it wouldn't affect the outside. This was also the fundamental reason why the heavenly grand ritual was held to determine the ranking of the Blessed Lands. As Officer Wang introduced the arena to us, he led us through countless worship positions, from the 3 lower altars to the 3 middle altars, then to the 3 upper altars, and finally to the innermost area. There was a huge arena here that was no less than 10 acres in size. It was square and surrounded by many areas. Each area was a family of the Blessed Lands. The east side was divided into 10 areas for the people of the 10 Blessed Lands. The other 3 directions were densely packed, each divided into 36 regions. The west side was the 36 small heavens, while the north and south sides were the 72 Blessed Lands. When we arrived, the people of the other Blessed Lands had already taken their seats. Since Wangwu Grotto Heaven was ranked first among the 10 Blessed Lands, we attracted everyone's attention as soon as we appeared. Officer Wang didn't say anything else. He led us to the center of the east side, where Wangwu Grotto Heaven's area was. Fu and the others were already seated. When they saw us, they stood up and saluted. After we sat down, Wang told me the rules of the tournament in detail. Although the Blessed Lands were divided into large and small Grotto Heavens, the rest of the Blessed Lands were different. However, in the cultivation world, heroes weren't judged by their birth. That was why the ranking competition for the next 10 years would be the fairest. The 10 great Grotto Heavens, 36 small Grotto Heavens, and 72 Blessed Lands added together, there were 118 families. Due to their status, the 10 great Grotto Heavens enjoyed slight preferential treatment and didn't need to participate in the first round of competition. After the other 108 families finished the first round of competition, the remaining 54 families would advance to the next round. At that time, the 10 great Grotto Heavens would join the competition, and the 64 families would move on to the next round of competition. They would fight each other to decide who was the strongest family. Since every competition had its own ranking, the matches in each round would be based on the previous competition's ranking. The matches would be arranged from the beginning to the end, ensuring fairness to the greatest extent. After the final winner was decided, there would be additional matches for those who had been eliminated. Finally, there would be a new ranking. For the 10 great Grotto Heavens, their attention was naturally focused on the competition for the strongest. Their goal was to at least enter the top 8, and even get a share of the highest honor. As for the weaker clans in the 72 Blessed Lands, they did not even have a young God Celestial Master, so they were destined to lose a match. Therefore, their goal was completely placed in the subsequent matches. As long as they could rise a few ranks compared to the previous years, they would have achieved their wish. Of course, in the previous All-Heaven competitions, There have been many families that had defeated the stronger ones. Even the 10 great grotto heavens have been defeated by the families from the 72 blessed lands. In this competition, because of Wanwu Grotto Heaven's unprecedented weakness, not only had the 10 great grotto heavens targeted it, but some of the families from the 72 blessed lands had also set their sights on Wanwu Grotto Heaven. As long as they passed the first round, if they could encounter Wanwu Grotto Heaven and enter the top 32, they would be guaranteed a place in the 36 small grotto heavens. If they were lucky, they could encounter Wanwu Grotto Heaven in the third round and enter the top 10 grotto heavens. Therefore, in everyone's eyes, Wanwu Grotto Heaven was a big piece of meat, and they wanted everyone to come and take a bite. One could imagine how much pressure Wongkin was under. Even though he had invited me and the fatty to help him, Wongkin still frowned when he talked about the current situation. Obviously, he was still not optimistic about his future. It wasn't his fault for being cautious. Although there were several young god celestial masters among the Wong family servants, only Fu had cultivated to the peak of young god. Moreover, the Wong family cultivated witchcraft qi, so they weren't as proficient in Taoist qi cultivation methods as the other grotto heavens. In addition, Fu was already old, so he didn't have any advantage over the young god celestial masters sent by the other blessed lands. In the Seal Celestial Master realm, many people could be sent, but in the same way, the Seal Celestial Masters of the other family servants were not good enough. Only Wong, Kan, and I could fight. One of us was at the middle stage of the Heaven Master realm, and the other was at the early stage of the Heaven Master realm. Although we both had the forward seal, it was hard to guarantee that there were no talented people in the other grotto heavens, such as Zhao Hao, who was an extremely difficult opponent. In the Glory of Consciousness realm, Wongkin didn't know much about the fatty's cultivation. Even if he was really strong, he was just a mortal cultivator. In the blessed lands with thousands of years of history, there was no shortage of talented people, let alone powerful cultivation methods. With such a lineup, Wongkin certainly wasn't sure what the final result would be. However, I was quite calm. Although the scale of the blessed lands was far beyond my imagination, in terms of fighting capacity, I was confident that I was not inferior to Zhao Hao. As for the fatty, he could set up a formation to resist the attack of the young god celestial master. In the Glory of Consciousness realm, he might not be invincible, but at least he could fight against everyone. The only thing I wasn't sure about was Fu. However, the all-heaven competition was a best-of-3 competition. As long as the fatty and I could win, it would be enough. As I was about to comfort Wongkin, the people from the 36 small paradises and the 72 blessed lands had already gone to the arena. They received their tokens and were ready to start the first round of the competition. Then Officer Wong and I stopped talking and looked at the arena. Chapter 592. Back in the Chiyu Cave, Wongkin told me that the Mang Mountain Zhang family was one of the 72 blessed lands. With Zhang Kunlun's talent and Northern Mang Mountain's background, it was normal for him to become a heaven master or an expert in the Glory of Knowledge realm. That was why I was prepared to meet Zhang Kunlun at the Heavenly Grand Ritual. However, after carefully searching, I didn't see Zhang Kunlun. Instead, I saw Chen Yadong, who I had fought against during the Metaphysics Society's competition for the Bright Stone. Other than him, I also noticed 2 other people from the Metaphysics Society. One of them was Su Kuan from the Su family of Jinling. I don't remember the other's name, but I do remember that he was from the Lai family of Luliang Mountain. Seeing 3 old friends from the Metaphysics Society, I felt a bit emotional. However, what shocked me the most wasn't them, but a woman who was also standing on the side of the Luliang Mountain Grotto. She had a beautiful face and a cold expression. She was wearing a white veil. She was the cheap teacher I had met when I was disguised as Wang Lin in the corpse sect, Lin Shui. Back in the corpse sect, the old president's disciples all betrayed him and killed the other elders. Lin Shui took advantage of the chaos and escaped under the protection of Zichun. I originally thought that we would go our separate ways, but I didn't expect to meet her here today. Looking at where she was standing, she had a special relationship with the Lai family of Luliang Mountain. However, from her surname, she wasn't a member of the Lai family. Due to the distance, I couldn't see through their cultivation levels, so I turned to Wang Can and asked, "Do you know the cultivation levels of these people?" Wang Can shook his head. Although the Wangwu Grotto is hosting the heavenly grand ritual, the grotto heavens aren't bound by the rules. They can choose their own people as long as their cultivation levels meet the rules. That's why there was no name list, so I don't know their cultivation levels. I nodded, but I was secretly a bit shocked. Back at the Young Phoenix gathering, my talent could be said to have far surpassed that of the other metaphysical families. But now, I've only just become a heavenly master not long ago. Since these people can participate in the all-heaven competition, they should be at least at the great circle of glorious knowledge. It seemed that while I was working hard to cultivate, the others didn't fall behind. As I looked at these people, their eyes were focused on me. I was surprised, but they were obviously more surprised than me. They all looked at me with disbelief in their eyes. Of course, Lin Shui's expression was calm. After all, I had used MOEB to change my appearance back then, so she had yet to recognize me. When I agreed to participate in the all-heaven competition with Wang Can, I was already prepared to be recognized by the people of the metaphysics world. Because I'm cultivating wizard Qi, I'm still the target of everyone's hatred in the metaphysics world. But firstly, I already had the strength not inferior to Yang Shun, Celestial Master. Secondly, I was currently in Wangwu Grotto Heaven, so I didn't have to worry about my face being discovered by these people. In fact, I had asked Wang Can about the people who cultivated wizard Qi. According to Wang Can, in the metaphysics world, those who cultivated Taoist Qi did regard those who cultivated wizard Qi as enemies. But in fact, it was just a habit that had been passed down from generation to generation since ancient times. In the blessed enclave, only the Wang family cultivated wizard Qi. However, the Wang family had been the top of the 10 heavens for thousands of years. Every generation, there were strong people in charge. For example, Wang Can's father even had the cultivation of Xiaju. For many years, they had been standing at the peak of the blessed enclave. Even if the people of the other blessed enclave regarded them as enemies, they couldn't do anything to the Wang family. Over time, no one pursued this matter anymore. Now that the Wang family had declined, the other blessed enclave also had some dangerous ideas. However, Wang Can had once said that in the Wang family, he still had 2 uncles who cultivated in seclusion. Although they never participated in daily affairs, if there was a disaster, they would take action no matter what. Therefore, no one in the other blessed enclave dared to use wizard Qi to cause trouble. After all, the battle of the witchcraft path was a battle of the origin. Once the conflict intensified, it would be a life-or-death situation. No one was willing to face the anger of 2 young spirit experts. From this, it could be seen that power was the fundamental principle in this world. As long as one had enough power, even if it was a battle of the witchcraft path, others could only turn a blind eye to it. With my current power, it was impossible for others to give up on pursuing this matter. However, in the secular world of metaphysics, if anyone wanted to use this matter against me again, they would have to think about whether they could bear the consequences or not. Therefore, I wasn't afraid of them. At this moment, Wang Can suddenly said to me, this time, Lu Jinyang isn't among the people sent by the blessed mountain. When I heard Lu Jinyang's name, I was startled. Then, I remembered that Wang Can had mentioned this matter to Lu Jinyang the last time they had met. The blessed mountain. I glanced around and saw an area in the arena marked with the words spiritual mountain. However, it was strange that there were only 2 people standing there, and I didn't know either of them. Judging from the number of people, the 2 of them must be from families without a Yang spirit celestial master. However, Lu Jinyang had condensed his Yang spirit. Why didn't he represent his family to participate in this competition? With his strength, even if he was in the Yang spirit realm, he could still compete with others. The all-heaven grand competition was extremely important to the families of the blessed mountain abode. If the Lu family had other Yang spirit celestial masters to participate, it would have been fine. However, the Lu family didn't have any other Yang spirit celestial masters, and Lu Jinyang had given up on participating. This was somewhat puzzling. I slightly frowned. After thinking for a while, I didn't say anything. Instead, I turned to look at the area below the arena. Below the arena, the Blessed Mountain abode was also divided into fixed areas. After glancing around for a while, I found the area where the Lu family was located. I still didn't find Lu Jinyang in this area, but I unexpectedly saw Lu Zining. This person was the one who had killed my parents. After killing Lu Ziyang in the royal tomb of the Shang dynasty, I had slightly let go of my obsession to avenge my parents. After that, I also wanted to go to the capital to finish off Lu Zining. However, after I killed Lu Ziyang, the Lu family's defenses would definitely be tighter. Secondly, so many celestial masters had died in the royal tomb of the Shang dynasty. All the other forces had focused their attention on me. Once I appeared, I wouldn't just have to deal with the Lu family, but all the other families. Thus, after careful consideration, I didn't go to the capital for the time being. Who would have thought that Lu Zining would also come here? The corners of my mouth slightly rose, revealing a cold smile. Since he was here, I didn't have to go to the capital. After making up my mind, on the arena, the battle numbers of the families had already been assigned. The unrelated families retreated below the arena, leaving the people of their families to fight in order. As the arena was very wide, it was divided into many areas. Thus, the first round of the competition wasn't carried out one by one. It was divided into 3 large areas and 10 small areas. The 10 families would start at the same time, according to their numbers. In the first round, the 36 small paradises and 72 blessed lands would fight according to the order of first place. There was a huge disparity in strength. Among the 3, there was Xuanda Paradise, which was ranked first among the 36 small paradises. Zhao Hao wasn't among the 3 that they sent, but 3 unfamiliar people that I had never seen before. In these 10 battles, the last 10 families of the 72 blessed lands didn't even have a single young god celestial master. All of them sent out 2 people. Moreover, they were just going through the motions. The 20 of them walked 1 round on the arena, and before they even fought, they all surrendered. It was a clean defeat. Their actions weren't strange. The only thing that made me feel strange was that the blessed land ranked 3rd from the bottom of the 72 blessed lands was called Baiming Blessed Land. Luoyang's Mount Mang was also called Baiming Mountain because only its northern part was in the ancient Luoyang. This Baiming Blessed Land seemed to be where Zhang Kunlun's family was located. During the Metaphysics Association, Zhang Kunlun's innate talent wasn't bad. Moreover, I felt that Zhang Kunlun was a more mysterious and powerful existence than Lu Jinyang and Han Wennan. Logically speaking, the family behind him should be even more powerful. I didn't expect that Baiming Blessed Land's ranking would be so low. Moreover, they didn't even fight and directly surrendered. They didn't even have the slightest desire to fight for a higher position. However, Baiming Blessed Land's strength was so weak. Zhang Kunlun must be one of the best among them. Why didn't he participate in this competition? I asked Officer Wang suspiciously. I remember that you previously told me that Baiming Blessed Land and Wangwu Blessed Land have a close relationship due to their geographical location. According to what I know, Mount Mang has been a Taoist blessed land since ancient times. There's also the Shangqing Palace where I used to refine pills. It has a deep foundation, so why is it ranked so low in the Blessed Lands ranking? Officer Wang smiled. Sage, you misunderstood. Mount Mang is indeed called Baiming Blessed Land, but in our Blessed Land, the 2 are different. There's a proverb in the secular world that says, born in Suang, buried in Baiming. In fact, Baiming Blessed Land isn't above Mount Mang. It's below Mount Mang. It's the Blessed Land where the corpse cultivators live. A group of people who only know how to play with corpses are already considered to be extraordinary to be ranked in the 72 Blessed Lands. How can you expect them to have a high ranking? After saying that, he chuckled and added, because Mount Mang's tombs are located in the extreme north, this blessed land is called Baiming. The real Mount Mang covers a vast area and is connected to Mang Mountain. That's why it's called Mount Mang. Sometimes it's also called Mang Mountain to differentiate it. I nodded as I understood. Then I asked, What's the real Mount Mang's ranking among the blessed lands? Officer Wang smiled, but his eyes turned solemn. He answered, the real Mount Mang isn't a blessed land, but a heavenly grotto. It's called the Shangqing Heavenly Grotto, and it's ranked 6th among the 10 great heavenly grottos. Chapter 593. While admiring Zhang Kunlun's extraordinary background, I was also in awe of the ancient capital, Luoyang. The Wanwu Grotto Heaven was also located in Luoyang. There were only 10 Taoist grotto heavens in the world. The ancient capital, Luoyang, had 2 of them. No wonder it was the birthplace of the river diagram and the Book of Luo, the cradle of Chinese civilization. I said to Officer Wang. Officer Wang looked calm and said with a smile, since it's in the center of the 9 prefectures, there should be something special about it. What he said made some sense. I smiled and didn't continue the discussion. I lifted my head and continued to watch the arena. The second group was over. It was no different from the first group. They clasped their hands and admitted defeat without any unnecessary struggle. The difference between the lower level of the 72 blessed lands and the upper level of the 36 small grotto heavens was more than 1,000 miles. It wasn't something that could be made up for in the all-heaven competition that happened once every 10 years. It was not until the third group that the young god Celestial Master finally appeared in the Blessed Land family, and a battle finally took place. Among the 72 blessed lands, the Tiger Creek Blessed Land, ranked 47th, was located in Jiangxi's Pengzi County, where Tao Yuan Ming had lived in seclusion. The other group was the Daiyu Grotto Heaven, ranked 26th among the 36 small grotto heavens. The Daiyu Grotto Heaven was also known as the Daiyu Magnificent Heaven. It was located in Hunan's Chensi County. Speaking of the Daiyu Grotto Heaven, we had to talk about Zhuyu technique and Qinzhou sand. Zhuyu technique was a witchcraft technique, but it didn't only include the mystical techniques of the metaphysics world, but it also included Chinese medicine. There were 13 subjects in ancient Chinese medicine, and the last one was called Zhuyu. In ancient times, Zhuyu technique had spread far and wide. Today, it was only popular in Qinzhou, which was the Yuanling area of Shaanxi. The name Zhuyu technique sounded unfamiliar, but it was actually very famous. The talisman technique in Zhuyu technique was called the Qinzhou talisman. The famous corpse herders from Shaanxi used these talismans to drive corpses. Qinzhou sand was also a special product of Qinzhou. It was the legendary cinnabar of the highest quality. When making talismans, the higher the level, the finer the materials needed. Ordinary cinnabar could only make red talismans, but Qinzhou sand could be used to make purple and silver talismans. Over the years, I bought a lot of Chun province sand when I was making talismans. However, the quality of the cinnabar they bought every time could only be said to be of mixed quality. Only the heavens would know if it was the real cinnabar of Chun province. Because there were only 2 clans fighting, everyone's eyes were on them at this moment. While watching the battle, Officer Wang told me the details of both sides. In recent years, because of the decline of the Zhuyu technique, the strength of the Daiyu Grotto Heaven, which was based on the Zhuyu technique, had also been declining. Because their foundation wasn't as strong as Wanwu Paradise, their decline was extremely rapid. In the early years, they could even be ranked in the top ranks of the 36 minor paradises, but in recent years, their ranking had been dropping lower and lower. This year's all-heaven competition was similar to Wanwu Paradise. The Great Yu Paradise's family head had also died a few years ago, so before the competition, everyone had their eyes on their positions. Speaking of which, their luck was really bad. The Tiger Creek blessed land that they encountered in the first round might not be famous, but its strength was not bad. In the Jin Dynasty, when Tao Yuanming lived in seclusion, he wrote The Peach Blossom Spring, which was said to be about the Tiger Creeking family. Their ancestors had been hiding in the Qin dynasty and cultivated ancient Taoist magic. They hadn't colluded with the outside world for thousands of years, so they were extremely mysterious. However, this was a rare opportunity, so they couldn't help but take action. The 3 battles started at the same time, but like me, almost everyone's eyes were on the battle between Celestial Master Yang. The Zhuyu technique was different from Taoist magic. Apart from talismans and other external objects, when using sorcery spells, Zhuyu sorcerers usually use sorcery dances, sorcery songs, sorcery moves, sorcery rituals, sorcery calculations, and other methods. Among them, the sorcery dances and sorcery songs were similar to the shamans in the countryside, so they were related to each other. As for sorcery moves, sorcery rituals, sorcery calculations, and other methods, they were more profound and could only be learned by Zhuyu himself. Celestial Master Yin Jiayong was an old man. His white hair was strangely tied with colorful cloth strips, and he wore all kinds of strange accessories on his body. In addition, his skin was dark, so he didn't look like a Huaxiao person, but more like an African tribal chief. At this moment, I couldn't tell what kind of spell he was using. He was loudly chanting an unclear sentence, and a few bamboo pieces that looked like sorcery tokens were thrown in the air. However, it didn't land, but instead, they flew towards the Yang Celestial Master of the Tiger Creek Blessed Land. The Yang Celestial Master of the Tiger Creek Blessed Land looked much younger. He wore a green robe and looked more like a scholar in ancient times. At this moment, his face was solemn as he stared at the bamboo pieces thrown by the other party. He formed a spell with his hands and chanted in an ancient voice. Air currents rose around his body, swirling around the bamboo pieces, trying to force them back. However, the sorcery tokens seemed unstoppable, and they didn't even slow down in the slightest. After a while, they landed beside the Celestial Master, surrounding him and forming a mysterious pattern. We didn't notice anything strange from the outside, but the scholar stared at the bamboo pieces with a gloomy expression. It was obvious that he was extremely shocked by the Celestial Master of Chun Province's method. After setting up the bamboo pieces, the Celestial Master of Chun Province chanted even louder. This time, his voice wasn't vague, and his words were much clearer. Inviting Tai Elong of the East, with his bronze armor and iron armor, to descend on the altar, to ride on the iron horse, to raise the iron flag, to push the iron mountain, to surge the iron sea, to raise the iron chain, to push the iron mountain, to lock the house of the dead. Inviting Tai Erlang of the South, with his bronze armor and iron armor, to descend on the altar, to ride on the iron horse, to raise the iron flag, to push the iron mountain, to surge the iron sea, to raise the iron chain, to push the iron mountain, to lock the house of the dead. Inviting Tai Samlang of the West, with his bronze armor and iron armor, to descend on the altar, to ride on the iron horse, to raise the iron flag, to push the iron mountain, to surge the iron sea, to raise the iron chain, to push the iron mountain, to lock the house of the dead. Inviting Tai Silang of the North, with his bronze armor and iron armor, to descend on the altar, to ride on the iron horse, to raise the iron flag, to push the iron mountain, to surge the iron sea, to raise the iron chain, to raise the iron chain, to raise the iron mountain, to lock the house of the dead. Inviting Tai Wulong of the Central, with his bronze armor and iron armor, to ride on the iron horse, to raise the iron flag, to push the iron mountain, to surge the iron sea, to raise the iron chain, to raise the iron chain, to raise the iron chain, to raise the iron mountain, to lock the house of the dead. The golden talisman becomes an iron plate, and the star sand becomes an iron chain. The three heavens are the most powerful, and the iron chain and golden talisman are sealed. As he chanted, an indescribable pressure appeared on the bamboo piece that had fallen to the ground. Although I didn't know what it was used for, its power was definitely not to be underestimated. I furrowed my brows. From his chanting and the pressure, I vaguely understood that this chant was most likely a technique to summon a god. It was similar to the heavenly general talisman that the old president had given me, the martial talisman of the Thunderbolt City. Back then, the old president had given me 2 silver talismans in one go. I had used one to kill Lu Jinyang, and this silver talisman had always been in my hands. I hadn't used it yet. Since its power wasn't too great for me, I had left it in the feng shui shop when I was in Shenzhen. Now, I didn't bring it with me. This heavenly general talisman was actually a Taoist talisman to summon a god. The effect of the technique that the heavenly master of Chun province was using was obviously to summon a god. However, I didn't know who the so-called Tai Along and Tai Chilong were. Simply speculating, the gods that the young god heavenly master had spent so much effort to summon were at least not worse than the 36 heavenly generals in the heavenly general talisman. The young heavenly master of Tiger Creek Paradise clearly understood this. After a moment of silence, before the heavenly master of Chun province had finished chanting, he gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, and summoned his yang spirit. After the yang spirit jumped out of the top of his head, it strangely held a peach blossom in its hand. Back in the Yinshang Royal Mausoleum, I had seen the heavenly masters fight. At that time, the three yang god heavenly masters of Mount Longhu had summoned their yang spirits together. Each yang spirit had a Dao sword in their hand. Nangong had told me that the Dao sword was a yang spirit magical item with extraordinary power. Since it was in the yang spirit's hand, this peach blossom was naturally a yang spirit magical item. However, no matter how I looked at it, I felt that this magical item was somewhat out of place. Although it looked strange, its power wasn't affected. After the yang spirit appeared, it didn't hesitate at all. It waved the peach blossom and threw it at the heavenly master of Chun province. Chapter 594. In the arena, the fate of the blessed enclave for the next 10 years was at stake. No one dared to be careless, and they used their killing moves right off the bat. I didn't quite understand the moves of the Celestial Master of Chun province, but the young Celestial Master was obviously fighting with his life on the line. The petals that fell from the peach blossom were all condensed from Taoist Qi and quintessential essence. They even contained his blood essence. Taoist Qi was colorless, but with the blood essence, the peach blossom petals were covered in a layer of powder. The human body had blood essence. A normal person had about 3 drops, one on the forehead, one on the heart, and the last on the tip of the middle finger. Cultivators were nourished by Taoist Qi, so their blood was strong and their blood essence far exceeded that of ordinary people. But generally speaking, at the glory of knowledge realm, they only had 10 drops of blood essence. After reaching the Celestial Master realm, whether it was condensing the seal or the yang spirit, they both required a large amount of blood essence. Therefore, generally speaking, the amount of blood essence a Celestial Master had was less than that of the glory of knowledge realm. But now, the young god Celestial Master of Tiger Creek Grotto Heaven had used more than 5 drops of blood essence. Obviously, the reputation of the Diyu Grotto Heaven and the strange methods of the Celestial Master of Chun province had made this young Celestial Master decide to go all out from the beginning. Just as the peach blossom from his yang spirit completely enveloped the Celestial Master of Chun province, the Celestial Master of Chun province's chanting finally ended. The bamboo pieces around the young Celestial Master's feet suddenly emitted a dark yellow light. After these lights appeared, they gathered in the air and intertwined to form a light shadow. The light shadow looked like a black hole, but I stared at it for a long time and didn't find anything strange. However, the young Heaven's Master's expression suddenly changed. There was a clear trace of fear in his eyes, and he struggled to escape to the side. However, the seemingly ordinary black hole seemed to have a strange power that bound his body. No matter how hard he tried, his face turned red, and his body could not move at all. A trace of hesitation flashed across the young Celestial Master's face. His gaze turned to the Celestial Master of Chun province, who was still surrounded by countless peach blossoms. He seemed to be considering whether he should withdraw the peach blossom magic. After all, his Taoist Qi, quintessential essence, and blood essence were all concentrated in the peach blossom magic of the yang spirit. Once he withdrew it, he would be able to protect himself. But the problem was that he had paid a great price to use the peach blossom magic. Once he withdrew it, it would be impossible to defeat the Celestial Master of Chun province. He still hadn't come to a conclusion, but on the other side, the black hole didn't give him the chance. Several seconds later, light and shadow flashed within the black hole, and a fist seemed to emerge from the depths. The black hole was only 1 foot in diameter, but the fist of the celestial master of the celestial king. In Master of Celestial Spirit, after the fist completely appeared, I realized that using the word fist to describe it didn't seem appropriate. The thing that came out of the black hole looked more like a fleshy claw. It was covered in a thick layer of gray-colored hair, and its veins were bulging. It only had 4 fingers, and every single one of them was curved into the shape of a hook. Its fingernails were even conical in shape, and they carried an arc that caused others to tremble. At the instant it appeared, a baleful aura suffused the entire arena. What? Celestial from the incantation the heavenly master of Chun province had chanted. I felt that his incantation was similar to the God-inviting talisman I had used before. However, the God-inviting talisman summoned the power of God in the sky, while he summoned a claw. The moment the celestial master of Chun province appeared, I felt that his spell was similar to the God-inviting talisman I had used before. The celestial master of heaven's grand ritual around the celestial stage couldn't block the celestial aura. What shocked me even more was that even though the martial talisman of the Thunder General Horse was a silver talisman, it could only summon the power of a mid-stage celestial master. But the celestial master of Chun province summoned a celestial master of Chun province. Even though it was just a celestial master of Seal, I felt that it was far beyond the realm of a celestial master. If the celestial master of Chun province revealed its entire body, what kind of power would that be? After the celestial master of Tiger Creek Paradise appeared, it didn't attack the young celestial master of Tiger Creek Paradise. Instead, it stopped after rushing out of the black hole. It seemed to be curious about the world outside the black hole. After twisting a few times, it casually grabbed at the young celestial master. I couldn't tell what kind of power appeared. It was as if the celestial master of Heaven's Claw had casually moved its fingers. However, the young celestial master's body seemed to be pinched by an invisible hand. He didn't even have time to struggle before he was squeezed into a ball. Countless bones in his body broke and pierced through his muscles. The yang spirit above his head seemed to want to resist, but coincidentally, the celestial master of Heaven's Claw's top toe grabbed the yang spirit and pierced it. In an instant, the yang spirit was like a punctured balloon. Its body shrunk by more than half, and the luster on its surface dimmed. Because the yang spirit was severely injured, the Tao technique activated by the yang spirit ritual implement couldn't be maintained. The peach blossoms surrounding the celestial master of Chun province started to dissipate. At that moment, the eyes of the young celestial master of Tiger Creek Paradise were filled with despair. He didn't even have the strength to resist the terrifying chi of the celestial master of Heaven's Claw. I can't see through the strength of a yang spirit celestial master, but from the results, the strength of the two people on the stage isn't on the same level at all. The celestial master of Heaven's Claw continued to close. The young celestial master was about to be squeezed to death, but at that moment, the yellow light surrounding the celestial master of Heaven's Claw suddenly trembled. The black hole seemed to be unable to be maintained and collapsed in an instant. As the black hole collapsed, the celestial master of Heaven's Claw, which was filled with chi of Heaven's Claw, stopped its claw action. It seemed to be unwilling to give up and struggled to get its body out. However, the moment the black hole disappeared, a power suddenly surged between heaven and earth. This power was like the law. It didn't allow the celestial master of Heaven's Claw to struggle and enveloped it. In an instant, the celestial master of Heaven's Claw quickly retreated and turned into a stream of light, disappearing into the last ray of light of the black hole. As the yellow light disappeared completely, the chi of Heaven's Claw that filled the sky instantly dissipated. The terrifying celestial master of Chun province seemed to have never appeared. In the arena, only the young celestial master of Heaven's Claw was left. His yang spirit was broken, and his body was shattered. He was curled up on the ground, struggling at death's door, and the celestial master of Chun province, who was standing at the side with a solemn expression, The young celestial master of Tiger Creek Paradise had already fainted. The celestial master of Chun Province had obviously used all his strength as he stood there for a long time without moving. As for the people below the arena, they seemed to be shocked by this battle. Even the sound of their breathing could not be heard. After a long time, the people from Tiger Creek Paradise rushed into the arena to check on the young celestial master's injuries. The celestial master of Chun Province, on the other hand, let out a long sigh. With his body hunched, he slowly walked down from the arena. After he left, the staff of Wangwu Grotto Heaven walked up and communicated with the people from Tiger Creek Paradise. Not long after, the people from Tiger Creek Paradise carried the young celestial master down from the arena. This battle sounded complicated, but in reality, both sides had only used their Dao techniques once. After this battle was over, the other two battles between the Celestial Master of Seal and the Celestial Master of Knowledge Realm were in full swing. These two battles were still exciting. The Celestial Blessing Technique of Chun Province and the cultivation method of Tiger Creek Paradise were displayed to the fullest. However, the people below the arena were not in the mood to watch the battles. Everyone's mind was still on the battle just now. After another 15 minutes, the other two battles were considered to have ended. Both sides had won one battle each. Because the Celestial Master of Chin Province had won the battle between the Celestial Master of Yonggod, the final result was that the Great Yu Grotto Heaven had advanced. With this result, many people from the Grotto Heavens who were ranked at the bottom of the arena looked even more solemn. Some of them even had a tinge of sorrow. Although Tiger Creek Paradise had lost in the battle just now, it was not difficult to see that they had meticulously prepared for this battle for a long time. They had even trained the Celestial Master of Yonggod, Celestial Master, and coincidentally encountered the declining Great Yu Grotto Heaven. Everything was perfect, but the final result was not satisfactory. They had indeed shown their strength, but the foundation of the old Grotto Heavens still suppressed all their efforts. The Great Yu Grotto Heaven, whose clan leader had just died, already had such a strong foundation. The strength of the other Grotto Heavens would only be more terrifying. Chapter 595. After the third match, the competition paused. Everyone rested for a while. Wang Can and I talked about the previous match. Since I was frightened by the Heavenly Master of Chun Province's summoning claws, I asked Wang Can about the Zhuyu technique from Chun Province. Just like me, Officer Wang didn't know much about the Zhuyu technique. However, he told me that his father had told him about the Zhuyu technique. It seemed to have something to do with witchcraft. The technique was very powerful, but it took a long time to cast it. Normally, when fighting against a Heavenly Master of Chun Province, one had to attack first. As long as one kept suppressing the opponent so that he couldn't use the Zhuyu technique, one could win. The Heavenly Master from Tiger Creek Blessed Land didn't know much about the Zhuyu technique, and he didn't have enough fighting experience. In fact, there wasn't a big gap between their strengths. I nodded. I didn't need Wang Can tell me the weakness of the Zhuyu technique. However, I was more interested in the fact that the Zhuyu technique had something to do with witchcraft chi. It was the first time I had heard that witchcraft chi was related to other techniques in the metaphysics world. Wonka didn't know the relationship between the two, but I kept it in mind. I planned to study the Zhuyu technique when I had time in the future. The first round of the competition was already halfway through. Due to the order of the competition, the strongest and weakest groups of people had already finished competing. The remaining 6 Grotto Heavens and 42 Blessed Lands were very close in strength. After a short break, the competition continued. At the beginning of the 4th match, I saw someone I knew. The Maoshan Blessed Land, the leader of the 72 Blessed Lands, had sent 3 people, and Su Kuan was one of them. More importantly, Su Kuan was standing in the area where the Heavenly Masters were fighting. It meant that he had condensed his seal and become a Heavenly Master. Although the Maoshan Blessed Land was only one of the 72 Blessed Lands, it had a long history, and its strength wasn't ordinary. The fact that it had sent Su Kuan to fight against the Heavenly Masters proved that he was an expert at the Heavenly Master realm. I had seen Su Kuan fight against Han Wunan in the Metaphysics Society. Han Wunan defeated him with one palm strike. That was why I didn't have a deep impression of Su Kuan. I didn't expect that Su Kuan would become a heavenly master when we met again today. Even he could become a heavenly master. If Han Wunan was still alive, she would definitely be stronger than him. What a pity. To this day, I still don't understand why Han Wunan would enter the blood sacrifice well with his talent and status. He was different from Lu Xingyang. Lu Xingyang's cultivation had been crippled by me, and he had no choice but to risk his life. Han Wunan, on the other hand, was the leader of the younger generation in the metaphysics world in every aspect. There was no need for him to take such a risk. But then again, given Han Wunan's character, he definitely wouldn't stop because of fear when he decided to enter the blood sacrifice well. Otherwise, he wouldn't be Han Wunan. While I was thinking, the battle on the stage had already begun. My gaze naturally landed on Su Kuan. The one fighting against Mao Shan Blessed Land was Mount Gazao Blessed Land, ranked 36th among the 72 Blessed Lands. The Blessed Land of Mount Gazao was not very famous, but it was where the Tao altar of the Numinous Treasure sect was located. The Lingbao sect, also known as the Gazao sect and the Gu family sect, was founded by Gu Xian of the Eastern Han dynasty. Different from the other schools of Taoism, the Lingbao sect advocated doing good while seeking the path of immortality. Therefore, Gu Xian and his grandson, Gu Hong, had been studying pill cauldron incantations and plant incantations. While refining pills, they also practiced medicine to save the world. Both of them had written various pill scriptures and medical scriptures, and were quite famous in the secular world. With such a long history, the strength of the blessed land of Mount Gazao was naturally not to be underestimated. Even the Mao Shan Blessed Land, which was known as the Shangqing sect altar and the #1 blessed land, would not have an easy time winning. This was indeed the case. As soon as Su Kuan came up, he was attacked. The heavenly master of seals sent by the blessed land of Mount Gazao was a young Taoist wearing a Taoist robe and holding a horsetail whisk. The Taoist looked young and had a faint smile on his face. As soon as he came up to the stage, he first cupped his hands and bowed. From the looks of it, it didn't look like a battle, but like he was meeting a friend. Su Kuan's expression was cold, but when he saw the other party bow, he didn't know how to respond. He was stunned for a moment before returning the bow with a cold expression. The smile on the young Taoist's face became even more warm. He stretched out his hand and took out a fist-sized purple pill from somewhere. He held it in his hand and placed it on his chest. He said to Su Kuan, "Although my Lingbao sect advocates refining pills to save the world, we also dabble in the art of talismans. Among the 3 mountains of Taoism, talismans, your sect and our Lingbao sect are both among them. Since we have this friendship, let's not fight to the death. Fellow Taoist, please look at my purple pill. This pill is not a medicinal pill, but a battle pill. It contains the power of tribulation thunder. After it is used, ordinary heavenly master Yang God may not be able to deal with it. Also, because the power of tribulation thunder is too strong, I can't control it as I wish. To avoid accidental injury, fellow Taoist, you might as well admit defeat." There seemed to be a hint of mockery in his words, but his expression was extremely sincere, as if he was thinking for Su Kuan. Su Kuan was a young man, so he couldn't be provoked by words. When he heard this, he immediately became angry and squeezed out a sentence from the corner of his mouth. "We'll only know who will lose after we fight. Your tone is a little too arrogant." After saying this, he put his right index and middle fingers together and took out a silver talisman. After making a sign, he threw it directly at the other party. The young Taoist from Mount Gazao hurriedly waved his hand. As he retreated, he said loudly, "Fellow Taoist, don't be impulsive. The power of this tribulation pill is too great. I really can't control it. How about this?" Before he could finish speaking, the silver talisman that Su Kuan threw had already arrived in front of him. In an instant, like a whale swallowing, it sucked in all the surrounding spirit chi of heaven and earth. It turned into a shocking giant blade and slashed at the young Taoist. Seeing that the giant blade was about to hit him, the Taoist casually swung the horsetail whisk in his right hand. The white whisk at the end of the whisk instantly became extremely long and wrapped around the giant blade. It shook left and right twice, and the giant blade trembled. In a flash, it dissipated and once again turned into spirit chi of heaven and earth. After doing all this, the young Taoist continued speaking. I'll throw the tribulation pill to the side. After it is detonated, how about you judge its power yourself? Then, he didn't wait for Su Kuan's response and directly threw the giant purple pill to the side of the arena. Before it hit the ground, the purple pill shattered. Then, an inexplicable pressure appeared in the surroundings. Although I was far away from it, I still felt my heart palpitate. It was as if I had seen lightning flashing in the sky on a rainy night when I was young. I couldn't help but raise my head to look at the sky. It was a sunny day, and a purple lightning snake suddenly appeared in the sky. One end connected to the sky, and the other end reached the arena in the blink of an eye, striking the place where the purple pill had just shattered. The ground of the arena didn't shatter, and it didn't even make a sound. However, when the purple lightning flashed, everyone in the audience felt as if their hearts had been struck. They felt a sharp pain, and their breathing stopped for a moment. After a long time, I suddenly recovered. I took a deep breath and looked at the young heavenly master from Mount Gazao in the arena. This purple lightning, I don't know how many times he can use it. If he can use it more than 3 times, I won't be his opponent. I was just shocked. Su Kuan, who was standing in the arena, was even closer to the purple lightning. At that moment, his face was completely lifeless. After a full minute, his entire body trembled, and a line of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the place where the purple pill had shattered with fear. He cupped his hands and bowed to the young heavenly master from Mount Gazao. He said in a muffled voice, I admit defeat. He could not admit defeat. The young heavenly master from Mount Gazao hadn't spoken nonsense. The purple lightning really did have the power to fight against Yang Shun, celestial master. After he admitted defeat, the other matches gradually came to an end. Other than this match, Mount Gazao had also won the match in the glorious consciousness realm. Although Mao Mountain Blessed Land had won the match against Yang Shun, celestial master, in the end, they had lost the first round of the competition with only 1 win and 2 losses. This result surprised everyone. Mao Mountain was the rumored location of the Shangqing sect. After losing this match, even if they won all the additional matches, they could only be ranked in the middle of the 72 Blessed Lands. Su Kuan's face darkened, and the other people from Mao Mountain Blessed Land looked even worse. Officer Wang suddenly sighed and said, Mao Mountain Blessed Land wouldn't have lost. They have a deep foundation, and their strength is ranked in the top of the 36 small paradises. They probably didn't take the first round seriously, and the strength of the people they sent was only average. No one had expected that Mount Gazao, which had always stood aloof from worldly affairs, would suddenly show its fangs and claws. I was also puzzled. Everyone in the metaphysics world knew about Mao Mountain's prestige. They had thousands of years of history, so they shouldn't be this weak. After listening to Officer Wang's explanation, I finally felt relieved. In the end, it was because they had underestimated their enemy. Among the Blessed Lands, any family had a history of thousands of years. Although some families had always stood aloof from worldly affairs, it didn't mean that they didn't have strength. Even a lion had to use all its strength to catch a rabbit. Once they underestimated their enemy, even the powerful Mao Mountain Blessed Land would fail miserably. The 4th round of the competition came to an end. Apart from Mao Mountain Blessed Land, the other top-ranked Blessed Lands had also encountered fierce battles, but they all won in the end and successfully advanced to the next round. After the 4th round, all the 36 small paradises had finished their competition. The remaining 28 families belonged to the 72 Blessed Lands. They were ranked from 5th to 32nd. For convenience's sake, all 28 families entered the next round, and the last 14 places to advance to the next round began to compete. After the last 28 families entered the arena, I raised my head and saw 4 familiar faces. These families included Lu Yang Blessed Land, Golden Court Mountain Blessed Land, and Spiritual Mountain Blessed Land. The Glory of Knowledge Realm Fighter sent by Lu Yang Blessed Land was Lin Shui. Although she had been an elder in the Yin Corp sect, she had relied on Purple Chun Zombie's cultivation base. She was only at the Glory of Knowledge Realm. The Glory of Knowledge Realm Fighter sent by Golden Court Mountain Blessed Land was Chun Yadong, who had fought against me in the Metaphysics Society. After sweeping a glance at the two of them, I focused my attention on the blessed land of the spiritual mountain. Chapter 596. Lu Qingping and Lu Qingyi. From where they stood, one was Glory of Knowledge while the other was Celestial Master. Overall, their realms were no different from before. But after so long, their cultivations had obviously reached the peak of their respective realms. Otherwise, they wouldn't have represented spiritual mountain blessed land in this all-heaven grand competition. But Lu Xingyang wasn't here, so the Lu family would lose the first match. Since the start of the all-heaven grand competition, there wasn't much of a difference in strength between the two sides. The Lu family wasn't strong enough to give others a chance. Did something happen to Lu Xingyang? With the hatred between the Lu family and me, they would naturally be happy to see them eliminated. As for Lu Xingyang, considering the huge difference in strength between us, there was no point in talking about revenge. It would be nice to see something happen to him. The only pity was the devil refining gourd. If something happened to Lu Xingyang, it would be extremely difficult to find the devil refining gourd. My mind was in a mess. On the arena, the last match of the first round had already begun. Lu Yang Blessed Land and Golden Court Mountain Blessed Land were ranked 7th and 12th respectively among the 72 Blessed Lands. The opponents they faced were weaker, so they had a huge advantage from the start, especially Chen Yadong and Lin Shui. The strength they displayed could be said to be peerless in the Glory of Knowledge realm. In less than a minute, they each won. As for Spiritual Mountain Blessed Land, it was ranked 31st. Their opponent was ranked 6th, Nantian Mountain Blessed Land. Rumor had it that Nantian Mountain Blessed Land was located in the east of the East Sea. Its techniques were imparted by immortals of the East Sea, and its origins were extremely mysterious. The Lu family didn't have a young god celestial master, so they lost the match. In other words, both Lu Changping and Lu Qingyi had to win for the Lu family to have the right to climb up. Without Lu Xingyang, with the strength of the others in the Lu family, it wouldn't be a big deal for the Lu family to lose. After all, they weren't strong enough. But the Lu family had given birth to Lu Xingyang, a young god celestial master, so they would definitely be ambitious. If they lost under such circumstances, it would be bitter. Naturally, I hoped that the Lu family would suffer a crushing defeat, but after watching for a while, I had to admit that the Lu family was not ordinary. Lu Changping and Lu Qingyi had a slight advantage over the Nantian mountain fighters. Although the situation was still tense, it was easy for them to win. If there were no accidents, both of them will be able to win. With 2 wins and 1 loss, the Blessed Land would still be able to advance to the next round. Of course, the strength that Lu Qingyi displayed was only considered ordinary among Seal Heavenly Masters. If Lu Xingyang still didn't appear in the next round of battles, the Lu family would most likely be wiped out. After coming to this conclusion in my mind, I felt rather rueful in my heart. When Zhang Canwen and Lu Qingyi fought on the way to the EK Dragon Gate, Lu Qingyi was still an unreachable figure in my eyes. Not to mention looking down on him, I couldn't even look at him as equals. Who knew that in just a short year, my strength would completely surpass his, and I could even look down on him to judge his cultivation. I smiled and shook my head. Maybe it was because during this period of time, I had only come into contact with powerful people and usually felt that my cultivation was low. Only now, when I met an old friend like Lu Qingyi and thought about the past, did I realize that my cultivation was actually extremely fast. I had left those of the same generation, and even those who were previously above me, far behind me. The path of cultivation was long, and the state of mind was extremely important. Being complacent wasn't good, but belittling oneself wasn't a good thing either. Just as I was thinking, most of the battles on the arena had already been decided. Luoyang Blessed Land and Golden Court Mountain Blessed Land had smoothly won. The few remaining battles, such as the Blessed Land of the Spiritual Mountain, were also nearing the end. Lu Changping had already won, and Lu Qingyi had completely gained the upper hand. In a short while, he had also defeated his opponent, causing him to lose his ability to fight. Among the people of the Lu family, only Lu Qingyi had left a relatively positive impression on me. He wasn't a vindictive person. It was the same at this moment. After defeating his opponent, Lu Qingyi didn't continue to pursue him. He just stood there calmly, waiting for his opponent to admit defeat before nodding and leaving the arena. Not everyone was as good-tempered as Lu Qingyi. The Blessed Land of Mount June, which was ranked 11th, had brazenly killed the Blessed Land of Cave Spirit Source, which was ranked 26th. The Blessed Land of Cave Spirit Source had sent out the Heavenly Master of Seal and the Earth Master of Glorious Knowledge. I frowned slightly. If Mount June Blessed Land had done this for the sake of victory, it would have been fine. However, the Cave Spirit Source Blessed Land hadn't even sent out the Yang God Celestial Master. It was obvious that they weren't strong enough. Yet, Mount June Blessed Land had still killed them. It was indeed ruthless. While I was puzzled, Officer Wang sighed. He couldn't help but say, "This Cave Spirit Source Blessed Land is really pitiful. How did they encounter Mount June?" I turned to look at him. "Why? Has Mount June Blessed Land always been so ruthless?" Officer Wang shook his head. "That's not the case. Mount June Blessed Land and the Cave Spirit Source Blessed Land are located at the junction of Dongting Lake and Mount Hung. Since ancient times, there have been many conflicts and battles between them. Who would have thought that after the last ranking competition, the two Blessed Lands would be in the same position as they are now? Before the competition, when I saw the list of opponents, I knew that the Cave Spirit Source Blessed Land would most likely suffer this time. Sure enough. In fact, the Cave Spirit Source Blessed Land also has a Yang God Celestial Master. Since they sent two people, they obviously knew the outcome. I nodded as I understood what was going on. I didn't take it to heart. The fatty at the side asked curiously, "I don't know what these people are thinking. They're fighting with their lives on the line just for a title. Is there a need for that?" Officer Wang shook his head again. "It's not just a title. The ranking of the Blessed Land determines the distribution of cultivation resources. Although it's only a short period of 10 years, the opponents with similar strength will have a small advantage. After a long period of accumulation, it will inevitably become an unshakable capital. For example, our Wangwu Grotto Heaven wasn't the first of the 10 great Grotto Heavens. Since our ancestors won the first place in the All-Heaven Grand Competition, they never let go of this position. Until now, whenever people talk about the Blessed Lands, they must mention our Wangwu Grotto Heaven." The fatty still looked puzzled. He asked again, "But even if you lose, won't you still live in Wangwu Grotto Heaven? Do you want to move away? Even if you move away, you can't call it Wangwu Grotto Heaven in the future, right?" I had the same question as the fatty, but since it was none of my business, I didn't ask. Hearing the fatty's question, I was also puzzled. I turned to look at Officer Wang. Officer Wang said with a smile, "Of course we won't move away. Our Wang family has lived in Wangwu Mountain for generations. Unless our family is exterminated, we must guard the mountains and rivers left by our ancestors." The distribution of resources in the competition refers to the dragon veins in the Blessed Lands. For example, our Wangwu Grotto Heaven is ranked first among the 10 great Grotto Heavens and has 4 true dragon veins. If we fall to second place, we will only have 3 veins. If we fall to the 36 small Grotto Heavens, we can only keep 2 veins at most. The reason why the spiritual energy in the Blessed Lands is denser than in the outside world is that our small Grotto Heavens occupy 1 or even several true dragon veins. The cultivation resources I'm talking about are the dragon veins. I see. I nodded. Although I had never heard of a true dragon's vein being able to be moved in the secular world of metaphysics, it wouldn't be difficult for the experts in the blessed paradises to move the true dragon's vein. All cultivators knew the meaning of the true dragon vein from where they cultivated. There was no spiritual energy in the world for people to cultivate. All the cultivators had to rely on the power of true dragon veins from the very beginning. In the future, they could only absorb the power of true dragon veins to increase their cultivation. Except for Officer Wong and a few other cultivators who cultivated witchcraft energy, all the other cultivators needed the true dragon veins as their cultivation resources. The fatty was like a curious baby. After listening, he asked again, although your blessed enclave has a lot of true dragon veins, the small clans in the 72 blessed lands can't possibly each have one, right? Officer Wong shook his head and said with a smile, you're wrong. All the forces in the blessed lands have at least one complete true dragon vein. The fat man's face changed, and I was also startled. In the secular world of metaphysics, including the Metaphysics Association, there's only one true dragon's vein. Back then, when I told the Metaphysics Association about the existence of the true dragon's vein in the Fire God Temple, even the old president was alarmed and personally investigated. It showed how rare and precious the true dragon veins were. However, Officer Wong told me that all the families in the Blessed Lands had at least one complete true dragon vein. It was no wonder that the cultivators in the Blessed Lands were so strong. This kind of cultivation resource was really terrifying. Officer Wong didn't care about our shocked faces. He waved his hand and said, although each family has at least one true dragon vein, it's not as powerful as you think. The true dragon veins are alive. Some are in their prime, with thick dragon energy. Some are dying, and they don't have much dragon energy. Many of the true dragon veins in the Blessed Lands are dying dragon veins. It's said that there is only one complete dragon vein, but in fact, 10 of them aren't necessarily as big as the one in the Wong family. He didn't care about it, but the fat man and I looked at each other with a wry smile. The true dragon vein was transformed from the Tai Sui tree, so it naturally had its ups and downs. However, to the secular cultivators like us, even the oldest true dragon vein was still a true dragon vein. Even the smallest true dragon vein wasn't something that ordinary people could dream of. The true dragon vein in the Metaphysics Association was at least half the size of the half-transformed true dragon vein I had found in the basement in Shenzhen. However, it was still the foundation of the Metaphysics Association. They had sent people to guard it all year round, and they didn't want to expose any information to outsiders. Chapter 597. Because of our different life experiences, we have different understandings, so I didn't talk too much with Wong Can. I just paid more attention to this competition. Wong Can considered himself a Holy Spirit guard, so no matter what my identity as a saint was, Wang Wu Grotto Heaven was my subordinate. The number of true dragon veins would directly determine the future development of Wang Wu Grotto Heaven, so I naturally had to keep it in mind. For thousands of years, Wang Wu Grotto Heaven had been ranked first among the 10 Grotto Heavens. But because the Wang family didn't have many people, after Wong Can's father passed away, its strength had been greatly weakened. But as long as we continued to take first place in the All-Heaven competition, we would be able to protect the 4 true dragon veins and the foundation of the Wang family. I already had a plan in mind. In the future, I would call Zhang Qianwen, Lu Chuanda, Xie Chenghua, and the others here. After absorbing the true dragon veins' aura, their cultivation would definitely improve greatly. Especially Zhang Qianwen. He would definitely be a great help to me in the future. Apart from them, me, the fatty, the snake spirit, and Tong Tong would also benefit greatly from here. Even Wang Li and the disciple I accepted in Hong Kong, Mi Tai, could cultivate here in the future. With the 4 true dragon veins, they would be able to build a solid foundation. When I first taught Mi Tai the method of witchcraft cultivation, although it was just a spur of the moment, I had always kept in my heart. Everyone needs to find a sense of belonging. No matter what the nature of the battle between witchcraft and witchcraft is, I am still a witchcraft cultivator. In today's world, Dao Qi is flourishing while witchcraft is declining. Out of instinct, I want to spread the witchcraft cultivation method. Mi Tai was just an experiment. If it succeeds, I might accept other disciples in the future. In the past, I was worried that it would be difficult to find the Tai Sui and that there wouldn't be enough witchcraft chi. But now, there's a formation in Wanwu Grotto Heaven that can transform the true dragon veins into witchcraft chi. Although I can't stay here for a long time, others can. This has provided me with a foundation to strengthen the witchcraft chi cultivators. At this moment, on the arena, the first round of the competition was over. Some families were happy, while others were sad. The winners all had happy expressions on their faces, while the losers were dejected and annoyed. After all the winners received their promotion number, today's competition was over. Although it was still early, because the Heavenly Grand Ritual was still a few days away, the All-Heaven competition schedule was relatively relaxed. Regardless of when it ended, there would only be one round per day. Officer Wong went to arrange the departure of the people from the blessed and heavenly lands, while the fatty and I returned to the Taoist palace by the lake. As soon as we returned, the fatty continued to cultivate by the lake. I also sat cross-legged in the Taoist palace and continued to practice the art of controlling the armor removal sword. After watching the battle today, I gained a better understanding of the strength of the other people from the blessed enclaves. With my current strength, relying on the armor removal sword technique, my strength within the Seal Celestial Master realm is indeed extraordinary, but the world is full of strange things. For example, Zhu Yuk of Chun province that I saw today, the Yang Spirit technique of Tiger Creek Blessed Land, and the Calamity Pill in the hands of the young Taoist of Mount Gazao. These are all magical arts that I have never seen before, and their power is extremely great. Even if I go all out, the final result is still uncertain. If I want to help Wangwu Cave get first place, I must not take it lightly at this time. After practicing for a long time, my control of the armor removal sword technique was more profound than before, but it was very difficult to improve further. The speed of activating the armor removal sword technique was still maintained at around half a second. Seeing that I couldn't improve, I put the armor removal sword technique aside and prepared to practice the sword nurturing art. The sword cultivation technique that Taoist Huang Zhu had given me required me to practice the sword nurturing art at least once a day in order to achieve the effect of the sword nurturing art. Just as I was about to start, the door outside the Taoist palace made a sound. Imo pushed the door open and walked in. I greeted him with a smile. "Why did you suddenly come here?" Little Imo also had the temperament of a young man. He seemed to have walked out of the sadness of losing his master. With a slight smile on his face, he replied obediently, "Uncle Wong let me stay at his place, but he went out for a day and hasn't returned yet. I asked around, and they said that you're staying here, so I came to find you. Master told me that you're my master from now on. Although I can't call you master, Imo thought about it and felt that I should stay by master's side." His words sounded like a tongue twister, but I understood what he meant. After thinking about it, the Taoist palace was where the four true dragon veins intersected. Although Imo's talent was special, it would still be beneficial for him to stay here. Thus, I nodded and smiled. "Then you can stay here, but it's best if you don't stay in the Taoist palace. Did you see that Uncle Fatty outside when you came in? If you have nothing to do these few days, you can stay at his seat and cultivate." Who knew that when I mentioned Fatty, Mo's head instantly shook like a rattle drum. "No, I'm not going to stay with that Uncle Fatty. He's not a good person." This little fella still held a grudge. I rubbed his head and smiled. "Uncle Fatty was just joking with you in the past. He's a person with a screw loose in his head. Don't take it to heart." Little Mo didn't have much contact with the outside world. When he heard that, he instantly asked curiously, "What do you mean by a screw loose in his head?" "It roughly means that the Uncle Fatty outside is an idiot," I replied with a smile. When little Mo heard that, he tilted his head and pondered for a while. Then he nodded seriously. "I also thought that he was quite stupid, so he really is an idiot. But Mo doesn't like idiots. I don't want to stay with idiots." Coincidentally, at that moment, Fatty pushed open the door and entered. When he heard what Mo said, he instantly shouted in anger. He pounced over and acted like he was going to beat little Mo up. He was so frightened that he quickly hid behind me. I glared at Fatty and said angrily, "What are you doing? Don't scare a child." Before Fatty could say anything, little IMO spoke first. "It's okay, Uncle. He's an idiot and doesn't know much. IMO won't mind." Hearing that, Fatty and I were stunned. After a while, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Fatty's face turned pale as he stood there with his stomach bulging. Looking at Fatty's expression, I couldn't joke anymore. I quickly pulled little IMO to sit down and continued, "Uncle Fatty doesn't usually stay by the lake. You can rest assured and cultivate by the lake. You don't have to worry about staying with Uncle Fatty." I almost followed little IMO and said, "Stay with an idiot." The fat man obviously heard it too. His murderous gaze shifted from little IMO to me. I laughed and changed the topic. "How was your cultivation progress today?" Fatty curled his lips and walked to the side to sit by himself. He didn't bother with me at all. With my relationship with Fatty, it was naturally harmless to make a small joke. Fatty wouldn't take it to heart, so I didn't bother with him. Because the sword nurturing art increased the cultivation of Dao Qi, I brought little IMO outside and sat by the lake. I let him play by himself while I continued to cultivate the sword nurturing art. This was my second time cultivating, and I was much more familiar with it than the first time. According to the sword nurturing art, I mobilized all the Dao Qi and true essence in my body. After one cycle, I stored all the power in the Xianyuan sword. Then I absorbed the Dragon Qi to recover the Dao Qi and true essence in my body. After I finished, it was already 2 hours later. When I opened my eyes, little Amo was still sitting obediently by my side. He held his chin with both hands and looked at me attentively. When I opened my eyes, he jumped and quickly looked away. I smiled and asked him, "Why do you keep staring at Uncle? Is there something on Uncle's face?" Little IMO shook his head. "There's nothing on Uncle's face. However, when Uncle cultivates, the small sword in Mo's body will automatically be activated. That's why I'm staring at Uncle." Small sword? I remembered that I had seen little Mo take out the small sword in his body in the broken temple. According to Huang Zhu, that small sword was the natural sword embryo in Mo's body. Wonka had told me that the sword embryo in Mo's body didn't need to cultivate at all. As time passed, it would definitely become a sword Dao, true spirit within 60 years. At that time, IMO would definitely advance to the Yang God Celestial Master rank. For cultivators, the only reason why they didn't need to cultivate was because it was useless to cultivate. Wonka meant that Mo's sword embryo couldn't be cultivated at all. However, IMO said that when I cultivated, his small sword would automatically be activated. This meant that his sword embryo could cultivate under my stimulation. Chapter 598. Little IMO didn't understand the significance of the small sword being stimulated, but I was happy for him. I smiled and said to him, "This is a good thing. Your small sword will become very big and powerful in the future. When the small sword grows bigger, you can avenge your parents." Hearing me mention his parents, little Mo's expression changed. He stopped smiling and looked at me seriously for a while. He asked, "Uncle, when will my small sword grow big?" 60 years was too general. Even if the small sword was stimulated this time, I didn't know when the sword embryo would grow into a sword spirit. Looking at little Mo's serious gaze, I thought for a while and replied, "When you grow up, the small sword will grow up too." After saying that, I thought Mo would ask more questions. Unexpectedly, he nodded thoughtfully and didn't say anything else. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the riverside and closed his eyes to meditate. An innate sword embryo didn't need to meditate and practice. Once the sword embryo in the body became a sword spirit, it could condense the yang spirit. However, no matter how magical the innate sword embryo's aptitude was, people with such aptitude were essentially cultivators. As cultivators, if they didn't experience the gradual transformation from weak to strong, their foundation wouldn't be stable even if they could reach the sky in one step. Their achievements would still be limited. Moreover, No matter what method was used to condense the yang spirit, a body that could withstand the yang spirit was required. Otherwise, the body wouldn't be able to withstand the power of the yang spirit, and it would all be for naught. Looking at little Amo's actions, my eyes flashed with admiration. I didn't disturb him and returned to the Taoist palace. After returning, I thought about the reason why the sword embryo in little Amo's body had been stimulated. First, I eliminated the possibility of the sword nurturing technique. This technique was old Taoist Huang Zhu's cultivation technique. They had depended on each other for many years. If the sword nurturing technique had affected the sword embryo in little Amo's body, old Taoist Huang Zhu would have noticed long ago. It couldn't be because of me. I had nothing to do with sword cultivation. Even with my mysterious identity in my previous life, I hadn't found any connection with sword cultivation. If it wasn't because of the sword nurturing technique, or me, then the only possibility was the Xianyuan sword. I cultivate the sword nurturing art with the Xianyuan sword as the foundation. When I cultivate, the Xianyuan sword's aura will naturally spread out. When a Xianyuan sword had first seen the light of day, little Amo had absorbed the sword qi to increase his cultivation. The Xianyuan sword had indeed affected the sword embryo in his body. It's a pity that the Xianyuan sword is already in my body. Otherwise, I can let little Amo hold it for the time being and nourish it day and night. The only thing he could do now was to let little Amo cultivate beside him while he practiced the sword nurturing technique every day and see how the situation developed. After making my decision, I quickly closed the curtains and went to sleep. On the second day of the All-Heaven competition, the Wangwu Grotto Heaven will be participating, so I'll most likely have to participate. I'll rest well tonight so that I can prepare for tomorrow. Nothing happened that night. The next morning, when I opened my eyes, I saw little Amo sleeping beside my bed. Seeing that he was sleeping soundly, I didn't wake him up. I quietly woke up the fatty and brought him out of the Taoist palace, heading toward the celestial temple peak where the heavenly grand ritual would be held. After a short while, we arrived at the place. The heavenly grand ritual would be held 24 hours a day. However, because it was still early and the all-heaven competition hadn't started yet, the people from the Grotto Heavens and Blessed Lands hadn't arrived yet, so the arena was deserted. I saw Wang Qin from afar. He was standing below the arena, directing the servants of the Wang family to prepare for today's competition. Seeing my arrival, Wang Qin came to greet me from afar. After bowing to me, he asked, "Sage, why are you here so early?" As I walked towards the arena, I answered, "Yesterday's competition was very exciting. Even the strength of the families from the Blessed Lands was very good. Today we'll be fighting on the arena, so I came here early to discuss today's battle with you." Hearing me say that, Wang Qin's face turned gloomy. He sighed and said, "Yes, what the sage said is right. Yesterday's competition was an eye-opener for me. The strength of the families seemed to have improved compared to the previous years." Although he didn't say it directly, from his expression, it was obvious that he was pessimistic. He felt that the strength of the other families had improved, and only Wangwu Grotto Heaven's strength had declined. At such a young age, he had to worry about the affairs of the entire family. It was impossible for Wang Qin not be pessimistic. I walked to the side of the arena and sat down on the seat that belonged to Wangwu Grotto Heaven. I comforted him with a smile. "Don't be too discouraged. Everything in the world has ups and downs. A low tide doesn't mean anything. Moreover, we haven't competed with the other families yet. Why do we have to weaken ourselves first?" Wang Qin twitched his mouth stiffly and squeezed out a smile. He said to me perfunctorily, "What the sage said is true." Compared to him, I was much more confident. I advised him again, "Actually, our strength isn't that bad. I don't dare to say that I can defeat everyone within the ceiling heavenly masters, but at the very least, no one will be able to take advantage of me." Fatty and Afu's strength is also quite good. Even if we can't get the first place, we can at least keep our position in the top 10 Grotto Heavens. Wang Qin sighed again. Even if we can keep our position in the top 10, once we give up the first place, the other grotto heavens will inevitably look down on us. Judging from the hostility shown by Schwanda Grotto Heaven, I'm afraid there will be more disasters in the next 10 years. I furrow my eyebrows. It was true that Wong Kin was worried, but he was always thinking about the worst. It didn't help the current situation at all. I shook my head and said to Wong Kin in a more serious tone, I don't think so. We still have a big chance to keep the first place. Don't you trust me? Hearing my serious tone, Wong Kin finally came to his senses. He hurriedly said, Of course, I believe in the sage. However, the other family's contestants are also very strong. The competition is best of 3. Even if the sage can defeat all the contestants, it's hard to say who will win the remaining 2 matches. This time, before I could say anything, the fatty next to me was unhappy. He glared at me and said, What? Wong Kin, you don't trust me? These 2 people didn't get along with each other. I thought they would quarrel again. Unexpectedly, Wong Kin cupped his hands at the fatty and said, Of course, it's not that I don't trust you, Brother Lin. It's just that the other families are too powerful, and I'm under a lot of pressure. That's why I spoke carelessly. Please don't blame me. By the way, Brother Lin, I still need your help with the Wong family's participation in the competition. Wong Kin's tone softened, and the fatty was a little embarrassed. He waved his hand and said, No need to thank me. What's the relationship between me and third baby? Helping you is helping him. You don't need to be polite with me. After they chatted for a while, I interrupted them and said to Wong Kin, Let's not talk about winning or losing. Let's talk about today's opponents. Who are our opponents today? When we talked about the specific matters, Wong Kin calmed down a little and answered, Today's opponents, according to the order, should be the 18th and 19th winners of yesterday's matches, which are the Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land. In yesterday's match, the Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land defeated the Kingi Wanshan Blessed Land with a great advantage. According to Ah Fu, the Yang God Celestial Master of the Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land is at least at the middle stage of the Yang God realm. As for the Seal Celestial Master and the Knowledge Glory Earth Master, they didn't see anything because they had a great advantage yesterday. The word Tsin originally referred to a small but high mountain. The Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land was actually Mount Tianmu. Li Bai once described it in his poem, The celestial heavenly blessed land stretches across the sky, and its power covers the entire Red City. In reality, Mount Tianmu wasn't as majestic as Li Bai had described. However, since it could attract the attention of the immortal poet, it must have its spiritual energy and beautiful scenery. It could be considered a strong opponent. After listening to Wong Kin's description, I vaguely remembered the battle between the Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land and the Kingi Wanshan Blessed Land yesterday. Just as Wong Kin had said, the Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land had a great advantage. However, because of the difference in their cultivation base, I focused most of my attention on the Seal Celestial Master. Yesterday, although the Celestial Master of Mount Tianmu was powerful, his strength was only at the late stage of the Celestial Master realm. In my opinion, he wasn't a worthy opponent. Of course, this was only based on yesterday's performance. If he wanted to hide his strength, I couldn't see anything from his appearance. I smiled at Wong Kin and said, This is just the first match. I watched the battle between the Tsin Heavenly Blessed Land yesterday. Their strength is just average. It shouldn't be difficult for them to win. You shouldn't belittle yourself. After hearing my affirmation, Wong Kin heaved a sigh of relief. While we were talking, the people from the other blessed enclaves gradually arrived. When we finished talking, most of the people from the blessed enclaves had gathered. Wong Kin got up and went to work while I looked around. As soon as I looked up, I heard a dull voice behind me. Brother Zhou, how have you been? Chapter 599. The person standing behind me was a short and thin old man. He looked unfamiliar, so I didn't recognize him at first. Just as I was about to ask him, I suddenly remembered what had happened in the orchard cellar when I was investigating Yu Fuda's case in Shenzhen. Only then did I recognize that the sickly, white-haired old man in front of me was the celestial master of the Han family, who had almost killed me. He was also the fourth uncle that Han Wenan had mentioned. Back then, he had tried to kill me, so he was naturally my enemy. However, with my relationship with Han Wen-nan, I didn't have much anger towards the Han family. I just looked at him and said coldly, and Han Wen-nan are of the same generation. Calling me fourth uncle is too much for me. Han family's celestial master coughed and smiled. We cultivators only interact based on our cultivation. Brother Zhou, you are a celestial master now. Although I am a few years older, I do not dare to be arrogant. Back then, he did not even bother to explain himself in front of me. He had wanted to kill me right away. Today, he had a smile on his face, and his words showed that he was trying to please me. I pouted. It was just as I thought. As long as one had sufficient cultivation, one would be able to gain respect from others. Seeing that I did not speak, Han family's celestial master continued. Back then in Shenzhen, I had no choice due to the war of witchcraft. I hope that Brother Zhou does not blame me for what happened back then. I did not care about what happened back then and did not want to talk to him about it. I shook my head. I have long forgotten what happened back then. May I know why Brother Han is looking for me today? Han family's celestial master heaved a sigh of relief. He smiled. Brother Zhou is really an open-minded gentleman. Forget it. Let's not talk about what happened back then. I came to look for Brother Zhou mainly because someone asked me to invite Brother Zhou to meet an old friend of mine at my temporary residence in the West City Grotto Heaven after the arena competition. West City Grotto Heaven? Old friend? I frowned and kept silent for a while. Then I asked, the West City Grotto Heaven that Brother Han mentioned, is it the Chuanjin Holy Land, Taishan Total Truth Grotto Heaven? That's right. The Han clan's celestial master nodded with a hint of pride on his face. The Han clan originated from the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven. We are a branch of the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven in the mortal world. After saying that, he seemed to be a little emotional and said, back then, I didn't have enough talent, so I left the West City Mountain Grotto Heaven and came to the secular world. I thought that I would spend the rest of my life in the Han family, but I never thought that I would be blessed and return to the ancestral land. I was not interested in his situation. His last remark was the only thing on my mind. The Han family was born in the West City Mountain Grotto, which was ranked third among the 10 great grottos. Not to mention that Wanwu Grotto was in trouble now. Even at its peak, the West City Mountain Grotto was not much weaker than Wanwu Grotto. As a member of the West City Mountain Grotto, there was no need for the celestial master of the Han family to humble himself in front of me. Seeing that I was confused, the Han clan celestial master had no intention of explaining. After sighing with emotion, he cupped his hands and said with a smile, I have conveyed the message. Brother Zhou, please come to the appointment. I will leave now. After saying that, he got up and was about to leave. However, after taking 2 steps, he seemed to remember something. He turned his head and said to me, Brother Zhou, that year in Shenzhen, that young god, what happened to him? Young god? He must be talking about Yin Nan Tian. I looked at him and said calmly, since I'm still alive, the young god is naturally dead. I said it calmly, but the Han clan celestial master's pupils shrank slightly. He cupped his hands at me again and finally turned to leave. After he left, I sat on the chair and started to think. When he mentioned an old friend, my first thought was Han Wen-nan. However, when Han Wen-nan entered the blood sacrifice well, according to Lu Jinyang, he was the only one who came out. Moreover, even if Han Wen-nan came out alive, the Han clan celestial master was his fourth uncle. How could he help him and pass on his message? However, if it weren't for Han Wen-nan, I wouldn't have any so-called old friends in the Han clan in Qinling Mountains or in this Dong Tian in Xiqing City. What the hell is going on? Is there some kind of conspiracy in this Dong Tian? As soon as I thought about it, I shook my head and denied it. With the power of the Dong Tian in Xiqing City, if they really wanted to kill me, they wouldn't need any conspiracy. In the top 10 heavens, no matter which family it belonged to, they were extremely powerful. Even the declining Wanwu Grotto Heaven was guarded by Wang Can's 2 granduncles. In their eyes, the current me is just an ant. While I was thinking, Wang Can came back from afar. He must have seen the Han clan's celestial master come to talk to me. He cupped his hands and asked, Sage, was that man from Xiqing City? I nodded and briefly told him what had happened. Wonkin looked surprised. Sage, you have an old friend in the Dong Tian in Xiqing City. I shook my head. I don't know who he was talking about, but since he told me, I'll go there and have a look. I'll know when I get there. Wonkin thought for a while and nodded. I'll go with you tonight. There was a protective formation in Wangwu Grotto Heaven that only Wong could use. With him, I would be safe. I hesitated for a while, then nodded and agreed. After we talked about it, the second round of the All-Heaven competition officially began in the arena. The rules were still the same. So, Wangwu Grotto Heaven would be the first to fight. Since the top 10 heavens would also participate in the competition today, the rules were changed to only one fight at a time. Old Fu had been waiting for me for a long time. I stood up from the chair and called Fatty and Old Fu to join me. Then, I walked to the arena. Our opponents were the Heavenly Grandmother Sin Blessed Land, whom Wong had discussed with me today. They were still the same 3 people who had fought yesterday. They were divided into 3 small areas. After cupping their fists to greet each other, they started to fight. Fatty didn't have much fighting experience. Although he was excited, he was very careful when he came up. He started with a simple defensive formation that was easy to set up. Then, without looking at his opponent, he continued to set up a more complicated defensive formation. He didn't take the initiative to attack. On the other hand, Fu's side was much more radical. Not long after, they each took out their yang spirits and used them to fight. Every move was extremely dangerous. I was the one who had the easiest time. I was going to use the dismantling armor sword, but when the Seal Heavenly Master attacked, I found that his power was only at the late stage of the Heaven Master realm, which was the same as yesterday. He didn't have any hidden skills. So, I didn't use the dismantling armor sword. I just used some simple magic arts to fight with him. At that moment, my cultivation base was at the middle stage of the Heaven Master realm. Coupled with my dual witchcraft cultivation, my power wasn't weaker than my opponent's. After shaking for a while, we were evenly matched. After thoroughly understanding my opponent's power, I didn't want to delay any longer. I directly took out my Heavenly Master Seal, forcing my opponent to take out his seal as well. My Heavenly Master Seal had 4 characters. Since I had dual witchcraft cultivation, its size wasn't inferior to my opponent's, and its purity was even better. After taking it out, I didn't hesitate to control the seal above my opponent's head to suppress it. The Heavenly Grandmother Sin Blessed Land's seal Heavenly Master seemed to have been provoked. His eyes flashed with ferocity. He didn't dodge, but controlled his seal to face the attack. The 2 huge Celestial Master Seals collided with each other and let out a dull rumble. After the collision, my Heavenly Master Seal remained where it was, while my opponent's Heavenly Master Seal was obviously damaged. A bright yellow air current floated out from it, and the seal shrunk visibly. It wailed as it returned to Heavenly Grandmother Tsin's head and shrunk back into Bai Wei. The Heavenly Master Seal contained pure yang energy, which was the foundation of the seal. The person's seal's pure yang energy had dissipated, and his years of cultivation had vanished into thin air. There was no need for me to do anything. His eyes were filled with fear, and he immediately admitted defeat. After he said that, he hurriedly jumped off the arena, as if he was afraid that I would chase after him again. After I won, the spectators below the stage all cried out in surprise at the same time. When I took out the seal just now, although I tried my best to conceal it, when the 2 seals collided, the concealed aura dissipated quite a bit. Although the specific contents of a seal were not exposed, many people could see that there were a total of 4 words on my Celestial Master Seal. That was why they gasped in surprise. In actual fact, the characters on the seal weren't much of a secret. After I won, I walked off the arena, but I wasn't in a hurry to return. Instead, I stood below the arena and lifted my head to look at the fatty and Fu. At this moment, Fu's side had already obtained victory. Contrary to what Wong had expected, Fu was extremely ferocious from the start. He didn't even hesitate to use the pure yang liquid in his yang god spirit and fought with his life on the line. After me, he quickly forced his opponent to surrender. It was just that he had expended a lot more energy than I had. But with the 4 true dragon veins in Wangwu Grotto Heaven, it wasn't too difficult for him to recover. Fu and I had both won. Wangwu Grotto Heaven had safely passed this round. It wasn't important whether the fatty won or not. However, the fatty obviously didn't care about this. At this moment, his battle hadn't ended. It wasn't that he wasn't strong enough. In actual fact, the disparity in power between him and my side was even greater. The simple defensive formation that the fatty had set up at the start hadn't been broken, even after he had set up an extremely complicated and powerful defensive formation. When a young Earth Master from Heavenly Grandmother's in Blessed Land finally broke through the simple defensive formation on the outermost layer, he raised his head and saw a defensive formation that was much thicker and heavier than the previous one. He almost collapsed. However, this youth had perseverance. He clenched his teeth and didn't admit defeat, starting a battle that was like an ant trying to shake a tree. The fatty was really wretched. He hid behind the defensive formation and giggled as he watched the commotion. He didn't make a move. This battle finally ended with Earth Masters in Blessed Land fainting from exhaustion. After it ended, the fatty casually stood up and retracted the defensive formation. He chuckled at the crowd below the arena before walking over to my side. Chapter 600. After winning the first match, Officer Wong seemed to be more confident, and his complexion looked better. Then, the second and third matches took place. I had thought that the first match had a great disparity in strength, but compared to the first match, the following matches were completely one-sided. Many of the Blessed Lands that were ranked at the bottom of the rankings didn't fight at all, even though they had fought fiercely the day before. Instead, they chose to admit defeat. This showed how famous the 10 Great Paradises were. When it came to the third match, I paid special attention to the West Mountain Grotto Heaven. However, I didn't know any of the 3 people who had fought, let alone Han Wenan. After the third match, according to the order, the 4th Grotto Heaven should have fought against the Blessed Land that was ranked 15th out of the 72 Blessed Lands. However, the strange thing was that the fight didn't take place in the arena. Instead, the 4th Grotto Heaven, which was the West Mysterious Mountain Grotto Heaven, was announced as the winner. Then the 5th match began. I was puzzled, so I turned to ask Officer Wong, "What's going on?" Officer Wong seemed to know what was going on. His expression was complicated. After a moment of silence, he said with a wry smile, "Sage, do you remember that when I talked about my father's cultivation, I mentioned that there was someone in the Blessed Lands who was as strong as my father?" I immediately understood and asked in surprise, "There was someone in the Shiju realm in the West Mysterious Mountain Grotto Heaven?" Officer Wong nodded and said, "To be exact, there was someone in the same realm as my father before he passed away, half a step into the Shiju realm. My Wong family didn't have many people, and in my generation, I only had one heir. Every time I participated in the All-Heaven competition, it was difficult to gather 3 people. However, when my father was alive, our Wong family didn't need to participate in the All-Heaven competition. Because my father was alive, our Wong family would always be number 1, and no one could take it away from us. If the All-Heaven competition was the rule of the Blessed Lands, then the Wong family was above the rule." As he spoke, Officer Wong became excited, and his face showed a strong sense of pride. It was obvious that the completely different circumstances before and after his father's death made him feel very uneasy. After a while, Wong can calm down and continued, "Now that my father has passed away, the Wong family can no longer stand above the rules. However, Xixin Mountain is different. Their ancestor, who is half a step into the Dawn Realm, is still here. Hence, Xixin Mountain is still above the rules. However, it's also fortunate that Xixin Mountain's Grotto Heaven has always been mysterious. No one knows where it is. Normally, it doesn't participate in the other matters of the Grotto Heaven. It doesn't even care about the ranking that the other Grotto Heavens and Blessed Lands are fighting for. Otherwise, if they wanted to take first place, they wouldn't even need to participate in the All-Heaven competition. Our Wong clan would have to hand it over. Over the past few days, The strength of these families in the Blessed Enclave has left a deep impression on me. However, even such a powerful Blessed Enclave could only kneel in front of a powerful being half a step into the Dawn Realm, not daring to speak. As early as when I was in the royal tomb of the Shang dynasty, I heard that above the Yang spirit, there was the Yang spirit ascension, the Dawn Realm, and so on. However, I didn't have any direct understanding of these legendary realms. Now, from Officer Wang's words, I finally realize how powerful these realms are. They are so powerful that even if the entire Blessed Enclave united, no one would dare to disobey their will. Until now, I still don't know where the end of cultivation is. However, since I have to ascend after the Dawn Realm, that must be the end. When I was in the Fire God Temple, the silver-eyed man said that I had to reach the Heaven Ascension Realm before I could change the way of heaven. The Dawn Realm is probably the Heaven Ascension Realm, he mentioned. As he thought about this, the fourth match continued in the arena. The Mang Mountain Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 5th among the 10 major Grotto Heavens, was fighting against the Spirit Void Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 14th among the 72 Blessed Lands. It was still a battle of overwhelming strength. However, the Spirit Void Grotto Heaven did not directly admit defeat. It was only after the fight that they admitted defeat. In addition to their resistance, my attention was mainly focused on the Celestial Master of Seal sent by the Mang Mountain Grotto Heaven. This Celestial Master of Seal was Zhang Kunlun, who had left a deep impression on me in the Metaphysics Association. I haven't seen him for many years, but Zhang Kunlun is still a smiling little fatty. I can't see the temperament of an expert from him. When he walked into the arena, he glanced at me and nodded at me with a smile, greeting me. I've always had an indescribable fear of this person. Back in the Metaphysics Association, whether it was Han Wenan or Lu Jinyang, they were much more famous than Zhang Kunlun. However, I don't know why, but the one who left the strongest impression on me is always this seemingly harmless little fatty. With a great disparity in strength, the Mang Mountain Grotto Heaven easily won. Next, the Luofu Mountain Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 6th, also won easily. When it was time for the Red City Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 7th, to fight, I met another acquaintance. Chen Yadong's Golden Court Mountain Grotto Heaven fought this round. From the first round, I can see that Chen Yadong, who was in the Metaphysics Association with me, performed very well. However, in the end, Golden Court Mountain is just a small blessed land. The difference in strength between it and the powerful Grotto Heaven clans is too great. After the Red City Grotto Heaven, the other clans of the 10 great Grotto Heavens did not encounter any resistance, and the competition ended quickly. The result was naturally completely one-sided. The 10 great Grotto Heavens did not lose a single round, and all of them won. This is very normal, so no one paid attention to it. Soon, starting from Ashwanda Grotto Heaven, the remaining competitions continued. The clans of the 36 small Grotto Heavens were represented by the Shwana Grotto Heaven, and they were also very powerful. At the beginning of this round, Zhao Hao personally fought and led the Shwanda Grotto Heaven to an easy victory. However, when it came to the Changshan Grotto Heaven, which was ranked 2nd, the situation became strange. Changshan Grotto Heaven is another name for Gubei Yuzheng Mountain. As it is ranked 2nd among the 36 small Grotto Heavens, it naturally has its extraordinary points. However, according to Officer Wang, there seems to have been some kind of disaster in this Changshan Grotto Heaven recently, causing its strength to plummet. The Blessed Land clans they met in the first round were too weak, so they could barely win. However, in this round, the result was hard to say. According to the ranking, they will be fighting Lu Yang's Blessed Land, which is ranked 7th among the 72 Blessed Lands. It is also the force represented by Corpse Insect's elder, Lin Shui. If it was just an unfamiliar Changshan Grotto Heaven, I naturally wouldn't care, but with Lin Shui's participation, I couldn't help but pay attention. It's different from the previous round. Judging from Lin Shui's position in this round, she is actually participating as a Seal Heavenly Master. It's impossible for her to suddenly make a breakthrough in just one night. The reason why she is participating as a heavenly master is that she has brought along the purple Chun corpse that she controlled. The purple Chun corpse has the cultivation base of a heavenly master. Back in the Corpsine sect, Lin Shui relied on it to obtain the position of an elder. During the time I was lurking in the Corpsine sect, I saw many corpses, but the one that left the deepest impression on me was Lin Shui's purple Chun corpse. At that time, I suspected that the purple Chun corpse could sense the true power of the sacrificial evil spirit. Later, when the Corpsine sect changed, the speed at which the purple Chun corpse escaped with Lin Shui also left a deep impression on me. Of course, this is only an indirect feeling that the purple Chun corpse gave me. I'm not very clear about its true strength. However, from the fact that Lu Yang's blessed land allowed Lin Shui to bring the purple Chun corpse to participate in the Seal Heavenly Master Battle, it seems that the purple Chun corpse's combat power is also very strong. Among the 3 people from Lu Yang's blessed land, besides Lin Shui, the other 2 are middle-aged men. What's strange is that the 2 middle-aged men each have a corpse next to them. Corpse-controlling techniques aren't a secret in the metaphysics world, but compared to other Taoist techniques, it's much rarer. It seems that this Lu Yang's blessed land is a clan that specializes in corpse refining and corpse raising techniques in the 72 blessed lands. If that's the case, it's no wonder that Lin Shui would suddenly appear here after the Corpsine sect was destroyed. As the 3 people from Lu Yang's blessed land appeared on the arena, on the other side, 3 people from Changshan Grotto Heaven also walked out and jumped onto the arena. But when I saw the 3 people, I immediately frowned. The people that Changshan Grotto Heaven sent out also had a corpse behind them. Could it be that this Changshan Grotto Heaven is the same as Lu Yang's blessed land, a clan that specializes in corpse raising? Chapter 601. The corpse-raising technique wasn't a secret in the metaphysics world, but the appearance of 2 corpse-raising clans was a bit strange. Apart from the corpse sect, I couldn't think of any other corpse-raising clan in this world. With suspicion in my heart, I carefully looked at the 6 people in the arena, trying to find clues from their faces. However, after watching for a long time, I had to admit that apart from Lin Shui, I had never met the other 5 people in the arena. When I was in the corpse sect, I hid in the secret passage. Except for the so-called ancestor, I had peeked at everyone in the corpse sect. It could be said that there was no one in the corpse sect that I didn't know. However, the corpse sect was too big, and I couldn't be sure that I'd seen all the disciples of the corpse sect. Thus, I couldn't rule out the possibility that the 2 clans in the arena were the remnants of the corpse sect. I turned to Wang Can and asked, "Do you know the details of these 2 clans?" Wonka didn't know why I asked this question, but he still pondered for a moment before answering. Changshan Grotto Heaven is another name for Gubei Yu and Hung Mountain. In the 5 mountain grotto heavens, Changshan is ranked first. As for LV Liang's blessed land, there's nothing special about it. The only thing unusual about it is that, like Changshan Grotto Heaven, they both practice the corpse controlling technique. Oh, right, these 2 clans are very close to each other. Changshan is one of the main peaks of Taiyang Mountain. LV Liang and Taiyang Mountain are both in the west and the east of Shaanxi. Because of their geographical location and cultivation techniques, the 2 clans are hostile to each other. Now that they have met, no matter how strong they are, I'm afraid they won't let this matter go. Changshan is one of the main peaks of Taiyang Mountain. Hearing this, my eyes couldn't help but flash. When I sneaked into the corpse sect, I entered the mountain through the Nyangzi Pass at the southern foot of Taiyang Mountain and went all the way to the gate of the corpse sect. Changshan was also in the Taiyang Mountain range, and it practiced the corpse-raising technique. This was interesting. Since the corpse sect occupied the Taiyang Mountain range, I didn't believe that they would allow another force to occupy their territory. Conversely, it was the same for Changshan Grotto Heaven. It was very likely that Changshan Grotto Heaven was the remnant of the corpse sect. Or it could be said that the corpse sect was an outer force of the eternal mountain grotto heaven. When Tai Sui went berserk, He only destroyed the corpse sect and didn't uproot the eternal mountain grotto heaven. With the scale of the corpse sect, it's normal for there to be remnant forces left behind. I just didn't expect to run into them so soon. Of course, all of this is just my conjecture. Whether it's true or not still needs to be verified. Apart from that, I couldn't understand Lin Shui's actions. If the truth was as I guessed, with Lin Shui's identity, she should have joined the everlasting mountain cave. She shouldn't have joined the opposing Lu Liang blessed land. Either my conjecture is wrong, or there's something I can't see through. As I continued to speculate, on the stage, the two sides had already started fighting. Their methods were different from the others. As soon as the two forces attacked, they didn't join in. Instead, they controlled their corpse puppets to kill each other. Although the battle was intense, it was less dangerous. Back when I was in the corpse sect, I had also participated in some battles. Generally speaking, the disciples of the corpse sect would control their corpse puppets to fight. However, when it came to a life-and-death situation, they would have to join the battle themselves. Only then would they be able to display their full strength. However, the two forces on the stage had been fighting for a long time, but they didn't have the slightest intention of joining the battle themselves. It wasn't until the glorious knowledge realm Earth Master from the Eternal Mountain Grotto Heaven cupped his fist and admitted defeat that I realized that the two forces didn't seem to have any enmity with each other. It was clear that they had already colluded with each other. Officer Wang also noticed this and sighed with a strange expression. This shouldn't be the case. How could it be like this? The battle on the stage was still going on. Lin Shui's purple chin corpse was very intelligent. It seemed to know the meaning of this battle. It didn't look like it was going to risk its life at all. It just used its speed to constantly move around and adjust its breathing. After it had used up most of its energy, it suddenly changed its rhythm. A purple light gathered on its right fist, and it knocked down the Heaven Master Realm refined corpse with a single punch. They were both at the Heaven Master Realm, so no matter how powerful the purple chin corpse was, it couldn't easily take its opponent's life with a single punch. However, the moment the refined corpse fell to the ground, the Heaven Master Seal quickly controlled the refined corpse to not let it get up. He quickly cupped his fist and admitted defeat. The results of the two battles were out. The Eternal Mountain Grotto Heaven was eliminated and Lu Liang Blessed Land advanced. The two Heaven Master Yang God Celestial Masters, who were still fighting, saw the results and immediately stopped. They didn't even greet each other before hurriedly leaving the stage. This was a very big upset, but compared to the result, what was more surprising was the attitude of both sides. This was the all-heaven competition that involved the redistribution of cultivation resources. Even the 10 Grotto Heavens had to treat this seriously. No one could have imagined that the Eternal Mountain Grotto Heaven and Lu Liang Blessed Land would treat it this way. Of course, even so, no one would accuse them of being shady. Everyone could see that there was an exchange of benefits between the two sides. Thus, the spectators all had an indifferent attitude. However, a small portion of them were quite excited. They lowered their heads and calculated the probability of them encountering Lu Liang Blessed Land in the next round. Only I was still frowning in confusion. I couldn't understand the situation in front of me. Could it be that my previous guess was wrong? That the Eternal Mountain Grotto Heaven and Lu Liang Blessed Land were both remnants of the corpse sect? However, this still couldn't explain the situation in front of me. An exchange of benefits. Both sides definitely had an exchange of benefits. What kind of benefits did Lu Liang Blessed Land offer to make their archenemy, the Eternal Mountain Grotto Heaven, be willing to exchange their spot in the all-heaven competition? Thinking about this, a light suddenly flashed in my mind. If my guess was correct, the Eternal Mountain Grotto Heaven really was a remnant of the corpse sect. Then, what was the most important thing to the remnant of the corpse sect? It definitely couldn't be the true dragon vein. Although the yin energy that the people of the corpse sect cultivated belonged to the category of Tao energy, it was infinitely closer to shaman energy. Thus, the true dragon vein was useless to them. They also couldn't have the formation that could transform the true dragon vein into shaman energy like the Wangwu Grotto Heaven. If the true dragon vein was useless, then what was useful? The scene of the first time I saw the corpse of the Tai Sui in the corpse sect appeared in my mind. The yin energy that the corpse sect relied on to cultivate was all provided by the corpse of the Tai Sui. After the corpse sect was destroyed, the corpse of the Tai Sui was also destroyed. The conclusion was obvious. At this moment, what the remnant of the corpse sect needed the most was the corpse of the Tai Sui, or the yin energy it emitted. Only this kind of thing that was related to the foundation of cultivation was worth using the ranking of the heavenly abode and the cultivation resources like the true dragon vein to exchange for it. If that was the case, there must be the corpse of the Tai Sui in Lu Liang Blessed Land. Even if there wasn't, it should be something that could provide yin energy. I couldn't help but feel moved. The witchcraft energy in this world was thin. Although the formation in the Wangwu Grotto Heaven could provide endless witchcraft energy, I couldn't stay in the Wangwu Grotto Heaven for a long time, and the witchcraft energy here couldn't be taken away. According to my original plan, I planned to find time to go to the Heavenly Dragon Temple in Thailand to find the trace of the Tai Sui there. Of course, the Tai Sui's corpse was huge, so even if I found it, I couldn't carry it with me. However, I still had the jade bracelet that Lao AI had given me. The jade bracelet contained the true dragon vein that I had absorbed in the Metaphysics Society. However, that true dragon vein was dying, and I had taken away the saliva of the true dragon. Moreover, when Xiao Jin was cultivating, he sucked it every day, so there wasn't much left. After Xiao Jin left, I hadn't used it for a year. At this time, the jade bracelet still had a lot of space. If I could find the corpse of the Tai Sui, it would be the best place to temporarily store witchcraft energy. In the past, I might have wondered if the jade bracelet could absorb witchcraft energy. But now, I understood that Tao energy was witchcraft energy, and the true dragon vein was the corpse of the Tai Sui. Since the jade bracelet could absorb the true dragon vein, it could also absorb the Tai Sui's witchcraft energy. The journey to Thailand was long, and I had heard everything from the black-clothed Azan. I wasn't sure what the truth was. Lu Liang Blessed Land was different. Lu Liang Mountain was only 100 miles away from the Wangwu Grotto Heaven. As a family in a blessed land, although they had the Yang God Celestial Master, their strength was limited. They couldn't pose a threat to me. If that was the case, I could use them. Chapter 602. While I was thinking about it, the next match in the ring was about to begin. After Changshan, Cave Heaven, and Lu Liang's Blessed Land, the next battle was between East Peak Taishan Cave, which was ranked 3rd among the 36 minor paradises, and Lingshan Blessed Land, which was ranked 31st among the 72 Blessed Lands. According to the order, Nantian Mountain Blessed Land should be fighting against Taishan Cave Heaven. However, in the last round, Lingshan Blessed Land, which had only sent 2 people, defeated Nantian Mountain Blessed Land and replaced it. The Lu family had been able to win in the last round because Lu Qingyi and Lu Chengping were strong. On the other hand, Nantian Mountain Blessed Land was weak. Although they had the Yang God Celestial Master, they did not have enough talents among the Seal Celestial Masters and Earthly Masters. In this round, the Lu family basically had no chance against Taishan Cave Heaven, which was ranked 3rd among the 36 minor paradises. Between Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping, winning against one of them was already the limit. It was almost impossible to win both battles. The Lu family was also gloomy. Everyone's faces were filled with despair. However, at the same time, the Lu family frequently turned their heads and looked into the distance, as if they were hoping for something. I didn't need to ask to know that they must be waiting for Lu Jinyang. However, I didn't understand why Lu Jinyang hadn't appeared on the second day of the battle. If he hadn't appeared yesterday because he was confident that the Lu family could win smoothly, it would have made sense. However, today, facing the powerful Taishan Cave Heaven, he had no reason not to appear. Could it be that something had happened to him? I hope that was the case, but the problem was that Lu Jinyang already had the cultivation of Yang God, and his strength was not ordinary within the Yang God realm. Although the world was big, how many people could be his match? Moreover, I once heard that after condensing the Yang God, cultivators would have a kind of magic power that could shrink the ground into an inch. With a slight movement, they could travel thousands of miles in an instant, and it was difficult to catch up with them in the same realm. Therefore, when one reached the Yang God realm, it was basically impossible to be killed. While I was thinking, the three people from Taishan Cave Heaven had already taken their positions in the arena. They were two old and one young. As for the Liu family, they took their time walking up the stairs. It took them a long time to reach the side of the arena. At this moment, the leader, Liu Qingyi, sighed. The hope on his face finally disappeared and was replaced by disappointment. He smiled bitterly and said, forget it. Xinjiang hasn't arrived yet, so he definitely won't be able to make it in time. Xingping, the survival of the Liu family depends on you and me today. Hearing this, some decisiveness also appeared on Liu Qingping's face. After heavily nodding his head, he still did not say anything. He only took 2 quick steps and followed closely behind Liu Qingyi. The two of them leapt onto the stage at the same time. Liu Qingyi, who was at the front, had already regained his calm demeanor. He cupped his fists towards the 2 elders and one youth of Grand Mountain Grotto Heaven and said, Spiritual Mountain's Liu family, may I ask? He had only spoken halfway when the sound of something tearing through the air suddenly came from afar. This sound wasn't made by a sharp object. It was more like someone flying in the air, making the sound of clothes tearing through the air. It instantly made people realize that someone was flying over from afar. Within Wangwu Cave Heaven, there was a mountain protection formation. When one approached the entrance, one couldn't fly. Moreover, Tiantan Peak, where the arena was located, was the core area of Wangwu Cave Heaven. Not to mention ordinary cultivators, even Yang God, Celestial Master, couldn't fly here. Thus, when they heard this sound, everyone had a strange expression on their faces. They turned their heads to look for the source of the sound. I was also stunned. I followed the crowd and looked into the distance. On the west side of the arena, a small black dot appeared. As the sound of clothes tearing through the air grew louder, the small black dot became clearer and clearer. A few seconds later, a figure appeared in everyone's vision. This person was dressed in a black robe. He had a stooped figure and wore an iron mask on his face. Who else could it be but Liu Xinjiang? It wasn't strange for Liu Xinjiang to appear at this time. After all, today was the day of the Liu family's battle. No matter what, he should be there. However, what was strange was that Liu Xinjiang's current posture was a little weird. He was lying on his stomach. To be more specific, he was flying in midair, but his body maintained a crawling posture with all 4 limbs on the ground. It looked extremely weird. However, what was even weirder wasn't his posture, but the fact that there was a beast that looked like a dog and a deer sitting on his back. It wasn't strange for a person to ride on a beast, but for a beast to ride on a person's back was absurd and strange. Moreover, Liu Xinjiang's body was obviously emitting the aura of an expert. Yet, he was being used as a mount by a small beast. It gave people a strong feeling that it was unreal. They almost didn't dare to believe their eyes. I was even more shocked than the others. The others might not be able to recognize the beast that was sitting on Liu Xinjiang's back, but I recognized it at first glance. This fellow was the Qilin that I had forgotten in the monster refining gourd. When the monster refining gourd was taken away by Liu Xinjiang, I felt a little regretful for the Qilin. Although this fellow was arrogant and didn't care about people, he was still the incarnation of the Qilin Gu in my body and the miraculous item from Chiyo's tomb. He was also a legendary beast. Even if he had a bad temper, I didn't want Liu Xinjiang to have him. During this period of time, I had been speculating whether Liu Xinjiang had discovered the Qilin and whether he had been subdued. However, I never expected that when Liu Xinjiang and the Qilin appeared in front of me again, it would be in such a scene. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Liu Xinjiang carried the Qilin and flew to the sky above the arena before landing. After landing, Liu Xinjiang maintained his crawling posture with all 4 limbs on the ground. His face was hidden behind the iron mask, so I couldn't see his expression. I could only hear his stiff and trembling voice from behind the mask. "Senior, we have arrived at the Heaven Temple Peak. Please abide by the agreement." Lu Jinyang said this short sentence word by word. Just from his tone, it wasn't hard to imagine the anger and grievance he was feeling. I was confused as I looked at him. When I had first seen the Qilin in Chiyo's tomb, I had tried many methods, but I couldn't find any power or supernatural power. Besides its strange appearance, it was no different from an ordinary dog. Lu Jinyang, on the other hand, had the power to fight against Ah Fu in Chiyo's tomb. Later on, he had received Chiyo's inheritance and condensed his sun god. His power had become even more terrifying. I couldn't understand what the Qilin had done to make Lu Jinyang endure such humiliation without daring to resist. The Qilin was squatting on Lu Jinyang's back. He closed his eyes as if he was taking a nap. When he heard what he said, he lazily lifted his head and looked around. Then, he gently jumped off Lu Jinyang's back. Under the gazes of the crowd, he lifted his head and leisurely walked half a circle around the arena. Finally, he walked towards me. At this moment, everyone's gazes focused on me. I also felt strange. The Qilin used to ignore me, but as soon as he appeared, he returned to my side. I couldn't understand what was going on. The Qilin walked to my side and squatted down as usual. Seeing this, the expressions of the surrounding people from the blessed paradises changed. They looked at me cautiously, especially Zhao Hao, who had a grudge against me. Before. He glanced at me and then at the Qilin, his face full of surprise. Apart from these people, there was also an extremely angry gaze that looked at me. It was none other than Lu Jinyang, who had just crawled up from the ground. From his gaze, Lu Jinyang had obviously blamed the Qilin for humiliating him on me. When there were too many lice, there was no itch. When there were too many debts, there was no need to worry. Anyway, Lu Jinyang and I had a life-and-death relationship. It didn't matter if he bore a grudge against me. What gave me a headache was the gazes of the surrounding people from the blessed paradises. The Qilin had humiliated a sun god celestial master, which meant that his power was much higher than a sun god's. If he was alone and followed me, he would only intimidate the others, which would be a good thing. However, the crux of the matter was that the Qilin wasn't a human. He was just a magical beast. It was hard to guarantee that the others wouldn't covet him. Just as I was having a headache, Lu Jinyang helped me out. After glaring at me for a while, he shifted his gaze and jumped onto the arena. He walked to Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping's side and looked at the people from the Grand Mountain Grotto Heaven. A hoarse voice came from behind the iron mask. "You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."